I said, did you check all that? I said, I was about to ask him something. He said, wait, I just found it. It's here. So I turned to the 5 people standing behind the counter and I said, he's got it. It's a 15-minute drive. We are now 25 minutes to the flight. Come on, let me do it. And they said, one of them said, it's still 2 minutes. We have a 15-minute this, and we have a 10-minute that. I said, you know, I am actually a worker. I started my wasting time again. I said, I don't work in the air. Really? I said, yeah, here's my badge. What do you do? I said, I'm the rabbi at the airport, and I pray with people, and I advise people, and I help people. And you know what else? I'm also the rabbi in Peachtree City, where a lot of pilots come to my synagogue, and we have other personnel, the people who work here, the people who work there, they come to my synagogue, and we do, things together. And I'm used to being around this type of atmosphere and this type of tension. And you know what? I give you guys a lot of credit. I started wasting time. I started sermonizing. One of the women says, listen, you must check in now. So I said, quickly, she said, you must check in now because you are not going to make it. I said to myself, I'm getting somewhere. I don't want to stop this woman to stop me. So I said to her, there's 50% chance of me not making it. But there is another 50% chance, and that is making it. And so I want all of you now to stand with me and think positive thoughts. Positive thoughts make things happen. And the reason is because when you think positively, when you think things are going to be right, then things are good. And I said, I reminded myself of this sin, that this world is with God. I said to myself, not only am I going to get them to be on my side away, but I want to share with them a message that they will never forget. Because my mission right now is not just to get my hand, but my mission is an opportunity to make a garden for Hershel. And so I said to them, you've got to think positive. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, we're going to do a prayer now. Repeat after me. Tracht. They said, what? Tracht. Say it slow. Tracht. And they all said, Tracht. I said, good. And they said, good. Vet, sein, good. Loud in the air. Tracht, good. Vet, sein, good. I said, that is a prayer that comes from the great sages and the Jewish people. And it means that when one thinks good, positive thoughts, that creates a positive atmosphere and good things will happen. And one of them said, can you talk a little bit more about that? And I said, sure. And that woman, the one that said you're not going to make it, said, you know, we're 5 minutes away. I'm going to go outside and I will meet this guy and I will bring you your hand. That's the first word of that meeting. And then the rest of them, I spoke to them about what positive means, what positivity means, what God means. I told them in the Song of Songs, chapter 5, it says, I have come to my garden. A garden is a place of beauty. A garden is a place of positivity. A garden is a place of goodness. And that's where we need to go in life. We need to be good. So they said, if you need to be good, go check in now. Check in, we will bring you the guarantee. I sat down in my seat, and one of the 5 attendants did bring my hand. Within 1 minute, the plane pulled back. It was last minute, but it happened. You know what? I could have brought a hand in this room. Unnecessary. it was more than that. It was blessing the money. Life gives us challenges. There are lots of things in life that can be filled with tension, filled with difficulties, filled with challenges, obstacles, problems, things that we don't know sometimes how to get out. And Yud Shevat comes along and says, listen, this world is a garden. This world is a place where Hashem says, this is the place I want to be. But He wants us to create that garden. He wants us to plant beautiful flowers and tasty fruit and well-kept lawns and bushes. And sometimes it's so hard. Sometimes you lose your mind. You lost your hat. My goodness. The first thing to do is to panic. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to lost my sail. And I was determined not just to get back my hat. I was determined to turn this situation into a garden. And I believe I succeeded. I haven't been back to that area in the airport yet. I haven't pulled that car. Anyway, I've been out of town. I've been in Israel, really. And Israel, New York. But I will go there. I'm going to check up on that. And that really is a message. I don't have a car. I'm hoping that God will talk to me and will somehow have a car delivered to me. But in the meantime, making a God, creating a God out of Hashem's world, that's why we have challenges. It's only to bring out the best. And when we do that, and when we focus on that, we are able to create from this world a place where Hashem says, I'm proud to be here.
Yeah, I may have jostled it. I hope I didn't. Are there spokes? Ah, thank you. all kind of.
Should we show every? Is that Rabbi Klein?
A dear friend of Rabbi Klein.
Slach Eid?
on rare occasions 4 talks before. Then there would be a minor, and then there would be the second half of the Farbrengen, where the Rebbe would address the Rashi of somewhere in the Pasha, Pirkei Avos, it was the summer weeks, the Zohar from the Rebbe's father, and the Rambam of the day. But you wouldn't know where exactly he's going to speak. Even the minor, you had no idea where the minor would be based and what the minor would be talking about. It's all what we anticipated. And then there was a person by the name of Rabbi Yossi Lew, who was very into the Rashis, the way the Rebbe was explaining the Rashis. And he asked the Rebbe, he says, like a servant before a master, if I can just prevail on you, to let us know exactly what the Rashi will be, which Rashi will be discussed. Because I want to learn it, I want to check other commentaries, so I can be prepared before the Farbrengen. And more often than not, the Rebbe did provide the place, the Rashi, that he was going to be taught. The one exception to all of this was Yud Shevat. On Yud Shevat, the Rebbe said a minor, and the minor always, without exception, began with the words Yossi Lew. And without exception, the Rebbe explained one of the 20 chapters of the original Yossi Lew from the previous Rebbe, from the previous Rebbe. So you know exactly where this minor would be based on what the Rebbe would be explaining. And therefore, I remember even as a young girl, as a teenager, 13, 14, 15, we started preparing for Yud Shevat weeks in advance. We would study the Friedrich Rebbe's minor, and then this was already in the second go-around, the second 20 years. So we would always go back to the minor that the Rebbe had said 20 years before on Yud Shevat, which explained that time, explained the Friedrich Rebbe's one chapter. And we used to learn it well. And when the Rebbe started his minor at the Farbrengen of Yud Shevat, we were very excited until the Rebbe started explaining. We had no idea what the Rebbe was saying because it was usually very deep and profound, and we had to study it afterwards. That wasn't just, when I got older, it was different. But when I was still younger, even as prepared as we were, but we were prepared and excited, and we knew exactly what the Rebbe was going to say in the chapter, which chapter the Rebbe was going to base it. And therefore, every year, even to this day, those who publish the Rebbe's Maimarim, the Rebbe's Siddur, and so on, give out these pamphlets that contain the necessary study that we need. And these days, the last 10 years or so, you have podcasts, and you have articles written, and WhatsApp groups just to discuss the minor. This becomes a focus, something very deep, profound, beautiful, Hasidic clarification in this idea of Yossi Lew and what it takes, and the way it's discussed by the Friedrich Rebbe, and then the way it's developed by the Rebbe. And most of the years are two different Mahorim, two different essays by the Rebbe on the same chapter. Just parenthetically, one of the most amazing things in the Rebbe's prayer is the way the Rebbe concluded the Rambam. The Rambam finishes with the description of Mashiach, and he says at the knowledge of Hashem, as it says, the whole world will be filled with the knowledge of God, the way the water covers the sea. The Rambam will be concluded for the 43rd time in just under 3 weeks. And the Rebbe will address that halacha and that theme of the world being filled with knowledge. And the Rebbe spoke about that halacha 9 times. Each one of them completely different. I can't say completely, it's the same thing. But different details, different ideas, different thoughts, different. It's mind-boggling how you can take the same words and combine them on this dollar, like the fountain that doesn't stop. Produce new ideas, innovative, creative thinking, and presentation of prayer, and the same thing. It's just wow. And the Boston has a similar thing. You read one minor, which the Rebbe said in 1965, 15 years after Yud Shevat, based on chapter 15, and then you read the one 20 years later, 1985. And it's a different story. So, after this introduction, in 1985, Yud Shevat was on Friday. And the Farbrengen of Yud Shevat was going to be on Shabbos. The continuation of that Farbrengen was going to be on Tuesday night, which was the evening before So, people around the world were not part of the Yud Shevat itself, because it was on a Shabbos. And a great privilege, a wonderful, amazing thing happened to me in 1983. It was half of, that year half of was on Shabbos. And once a Shabbos, as before the Rebbe had left 770, I get a tap on my shoulder. I turn around. It's Rabbi Yossi Lew, one of the Rebbe's secretaries. Are you Lew? Yes. I said, yes. He said, I need to talk to you. Come with me. I said to myself, what have I done? I was sure I did something wrong because I didn't really have a connection with Rabbi Klein. I didn't have no connection. I just didn't have an ongoing connection. The secretary of the Rebbe that I had a connection with was Rabbi Grover for no special reason. It's just that was the one that I dealt with. Why does Rabbi Klein need to talk to me about it? Unless I did something really bad. It goes to my mind, what did I do? What did I do wrong? Anyway, he takes me into the secretary room. And he says, shut the door. I said to myself, something bad. He says to me, this is the words he said, you have been chosen to go to Johannesburg, South Africa, to the yeshiva. I said, yeshiva? He says, yeah, they're opening the new yeshiva. And you have been chosen to go among the 10 guys. Do you want to go? I said, what kind of question is it? Well, I want to go. Who's choosing me? Because the other client didn't make choices like that. It's come from the Rebbe. I said, he's talking to the Rebbe's name now. I said, what kind of question is that? Do I want to go? Who's choosing me? He says, was that a yes or no? Very typical. The young and fine. I said, yes, of course. I said, how about your parents? Would they agree? I said, my parents would be so thrilled with it. He says, have you spoken to them? He says, listen, before you go to a foreign country, you need 3 things. Number 1, you need your parents, before the butler or before us, and you should avoid those. You need your parents' permission. You need to have the papers in order. That means you have a valid passport. And you need to be Rebbe does not want to send yeshiva boys that need medical attention in different places. I said, 2 and 3 were good. Number 1, I'll have to call my parents. They live in England. And anyway, they're great. I'm not going to, it's a whole story. This is a whole story in and of itself. Maybe for next time. How we got to South Africa. But the bottom line is, we were sent to South Africa. And the way it worked, there were yeshiva boys that were sent all over the world. Caracas, Venezuela, Argentina, Miami, New Haven, Seattle. They were all places all over, Israel. And these yeshiva boys would study, but their mission was also to study with children, teens, and to study with adults, and to go out on Fridays and put tefillin and all of that stuff. But when it came Pesach time, yeshivas closed. They're not going to make Pesach for a yeshiva. And so they would go back home, but most people would go first to 7th go to New York, spend a few days with the Rebbe. Just when it came Tishrei time, when it came the month, the big month, most of the yeshivas didn't have anything to do for the Bachman. For the Bachman, they would all go to New York. With one exception, those who went to Melbourne, Australia, they had to stay for 2 whole years. And the people who ran the yeshiva in South Africa were very enamored with Melbourne instead of, I don't know, Caracas, Miami, or anywhere else. And they decided they were going to do that experiment as well. And then keep us there for 2 years, which is cruelty to animals. All of a sudden, you know about it. It was extremely difficult because 2 whole years is a long time in the life of a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, especially those who were sent by them and those who were so we were so involved in whatever was happening. I'm saying all of this because that Yud Shevat of 1985, we were not in New York, I was in South Africa. But we had many dear friends. And those dear friends really cared to share with us any little thing that happened. And if they didn't, we drove them insane. So immediately after Shabbos in New York, we would receive a phone call with a quick rundown. This is what happened on Shabbos. There was a Farbrengen and the Rebbe spoke about this and that and the other, very quick, brief. And they sang these songs, and there was one guy for songs, and one guy for content, and one guy for the other things that were happening. And then later in the week, we would be caught up with more of the title that the Rebbe said. And this went on for 2 years. I mean, at least thank God we had good friends. I think my Shemayo was one of those boys who took care of us. Guys who were in 770 had a double responsibility. Not only did they have to concentrate and listen to what the Rebbe was saying, but they also had to take care of those who were who were dying to hear what's going on. So this Yud Shevat of 1985, when we were in Johannesburg, we were preparing for the Yud Shevat by studying, all of that, as I mentioned before, all these Maharim. So the biggest thing after Shabbos was, what was the library? There were a lot of other beautiful things on that Shabbos. But the thing that was in our mind was the one thing that we knew what the Rebbe was going to say. And so when I got on the phone, on what's the Shabbos? I do not remember who it was. And what was the mimer? And the guy said, I don't know the mimer. The mimer was like long, it was very long. I said, the mimer, get somebody else on the phone. Someone else. And the person said, and the Rebbe spoke about a theme which he never talked about. And the Rebbe said, and it's only discussed in Hasidus, Zoltan Ert, which means rare, in very rare places. And he just gave me a very brief description. And we were on shows. We couldn't wait until a transcript came to be able to know exactly what was the idea, what was going on. And what it was. And I want to share this with you because this year is 40 years after. It's 40 years since. And that was the second go around. So it was 35 years after Hershel. And I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but just the theme was like this. It says in Chabad that before God created this world, there was Tzimtzum Harishon, the first constriction. What is that? To create a world from an infinite God to a most finite world, the bottom of the barrel place, physical material, where even there can be even opposition to the very God that creates. To do that, you need to go through a filtration system called Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is a Hebrew word which means constriction. There needed to be many of those. That's why you hear about these worlds. Each world, within each world, different levels. Each one of those levels acts as another system of filtration, of constriction, of removing the intense godliness from it, until it goes down to no end of these tzimtzumim until you get this world. Before all of those tzimtzumim, it says in Eitz Chaim, in the Sefer from the Ari, that there was tzimtzum harishon, the first tzimtzum. The first tzimtzum means it wasn't just a filter; it was a removal. It's as if you could say God had to remove His presence in order just to begin the process, because everything was God. And now there had to be space, something physical. So there had to be a removal, move aside kind of thing, that's called seal, a removal. And after that, you can have the tzimtzums, bunch of them going on. Now that's in Tanya, and that's all over Hasidus and Chabad and all over the place. It's discussed. This is one of the major themes in Hasidus. On Yud Shevat, 1985, in the minor, the Rebbe spoke about the tzimtzum shelifnei hatzimtzum. The tzimtzum that was before the first tzimtzum. The constriction before the first constriction. And the Rebbe said that's very rare. Discussion about this is very remote. The Rebbe said at one point, 2 years later, the Rebbe said, you want to crawl to places that you don't belong. Because now you're dealing not just with how God created the world, but it's a creative process, a process which we would, as humans, be the thinking process. So there has to be a thinking process before the removal process. I'm not going to get any further past this here. We'll talk a little more about it, but in much more down-to-earth terms. For the Rebbe to say that, to bring that kind of subject up, which is discussed, as the Rebbe said, only in 3 or 4 different places in Hasidus, in 1985 was amazing. And we lived with that for the 3 days then when the Rebbe came into the Farbrengen of Tuesday night, that was already a weekday Farbrengen, we were there listening, and the Rebbe began the Farbrengen with a minor. And in the minor, the Rebbe continued talking about that theme. Which is about Rosh Hashanah, living waters, Rosh Hashanah, which means Rosh Hashanah is a day where everything is stuck in the day, and the rest of the year takes from that day. So it has to be symptom, and the Rebbe went back into that whole area. Then the next Shabbos, in the minor, the Rebbe continued talking about this idea, and we lived this. And I always wondered why. And I'll tell you why I wanted this, and I'll conclude with this. 2 years later, around about this time, a little bit later, there was a published minor that the Rebbe had said in 1987. So 2 years later. And in that minor, there is a footnote that deals back to this same subject about this symptom before the symptom. It's in Lubavitch, Medicine. And the people who put this minor out didn't say anything. But a few weeks later, the Rebbe began to address it. And the Rebbe said, I don't understand why you have to start. He said, well, one thing to the next. Here's the next thing. Why do you have to go into this kind of thoughts and things which are very rarely important customers, and you have to shliach me into doing this? And it seems to me the Rebbe removed most of the discussion about it. And the Rebbe said, why do we have to talk about it? I said to myself, wait, 2 years ago, this was the big thing. And now, the Rebbe's complaining. Here, the Hasidim wanted to further this idea, which was very novel and very interesting and very wild and exciting. And the Rebbe's putting a stop to it immediately. I don't want to deal with this. What happened? More important. Why am I talking about this? I understand the Jewish Bible. This is remote stuff. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's really, really important to all of us. But first, let's take a little break. Say, behind us to eat. So I see chocolate chip cookies on this one as well. So give me a chance to take a little break, and we'll go back to it later. Behind.
Yes.
To be addressed.
Kollel series, a major theme is about the answer, the treasure that is given to the soldiers, and the treasure is given in all its capacity. They open up all the doors and they reveal everything so that the soldiers should be able to accomplish the victory. That's in the Kollel. And the idea is that the godliness that comes down to this world, that comes from the highest of places, from the most remote place, all the way down to the lowest levels. The purpose of all of this is that we have a treasure that is given to unchaste idol, to the people who are out there with battling, spiritual battles, to turn this world into a God, turn this world into a God. In that year, 1985, something really terrible happened. And a robber came in and stole Svarim from the three of the Rebbe's treasured library. Within a couple of months, in fact, while this Farbrengen was going on, this idea was beginning. It was the beginning of this issue, which came to fore right after Shavuos, and a month later, the Rebbe spoke about it publicly, and the Rebbe was incredibly distressed. Something that we never saw, ever. Couldn't even imagine. The Rebbe behaved as though he was in prison. And during the trial, the famous trial of 1986, the Rebbe went to the oil every day, which means that the Rebbe didn't eat food for the entire day for weeks. Hasidim were at complete loss. Who knows what can anybody do? But the Rebbe shared this with everybody. And eventually, in 1987, was famous, Ivan Lotza, the Rebbe is victorious, Hasidim are victorious, there is this great celebration, and then there is appeals, and it took a couple more years to settle everything, but in the meantime, the Rebbe wins. In 1987, the Rebbe wins, and Chabad is on wheels. And the Rebbe says that the whole purpose of this trouble, of this challenge, of this incredibly distressing, difficult part of Chabad was so that we should be increased in our activities, be more and more active. That's how the Rebbe saw it before the end of the trial, and then on the day of the announced victory at Davis, the Rebbe clearly said, the spirit of Yaakov lived because he sees that there is continued activity. Throughout this very incredibly, deeply painful episode, the Rebbe spoke and revealed things about himself that we could never have known. He told stories about himself that nobody would have ever known had this story not happened. For example, the Rebbe said that when he got married to his Rebbe's entire Hershel, he was told by his wife that the fifth Rebbe, the Rebbe Hershel, had left in his will certain books and objects to his granddaughter, who was now married to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe said, when I heard about this, I immediately went forward to claim my piece. And I told the previous Rebbe, this came to my attention that there is a will, that there is something left Rebbe for my wife and I. And the Rebbe says that when he spoke to his father, the Rebbe listened and talked to him. But as the Rebbe put it, to this very day you haven't seen anything from him. The Rebbe's point was that the Rebbe said how precious to the Friedrich Rebbe was every word of his father. And especially that which will be written in a will. And nonetheless, the value of books and of objects of a Rebbe are supersede that importance. As important as the Rebbe Rashad was to the Friedrich Rebbe, the importance of what these stand for is more. And the Friedrich Rebbe simply could not give it away. The Rebbe was showing that really, whatever is in the Rebbe's possession is actually the whole movement. It's not just individual, it's not an inheritance. It's not susceptible to inheritance. That's one story which was very uncharacteristic of the Rebbe to speak, to tell about himself, personal stories like that. And there were a lot of other things that the Rebbe revealed throughout. There were also Farbrengens and Torah and nuances that we heard hearing from the Rebbe throughout the time, when the Rebbe's efforts were here on this world, the Rebbe's efforts were also in the other world. For example, there was a Farbrengen before Hatzvi-Bais on Sunday at night, as it was everywhere, in Pfeffer in 1985. That was right after the story, and right as Chabad was preparing to go to court. The Farbrengens of Sunday night, as I mentioned previously, the Farbrengens earlier today, were out of this world sometimes. Things happened at that Farbrengen quite often that we didn't see at any other time of the year. They were unusual Farbrengens. The Rebbe's appearance was already different. Rebbe looked different on so much better physically. I just don't know how to describe that any more than saying that it was like this glow coming from the Rebbe on so much better that was different. And these Farbrengens were sometimes things came from the Rebbe that were like, why? One of the most amazing ones was that night, 85, on the line of Sunday. As the Farbrengen was winding down, the Farbrengen would end anywhere between 12 and 12:30, and Hatzvi-Bais would begin 1:15 around there. This was already quite late in the Farbrengen. The Rebbe had already spoken in incredible ways that night. I can't get into it. The Rebbe also did something highly unusual, that is, after the first sikha, the Rebbe started the meeting while he was standing. He stood up from his seat and started singing, dancing at the Farbrengen. Now, it's coming towards the end. And the Rebbe said like this. He started a sikha by saying, when we have vessels, the vessels are there to contain the things that they contain. And the Rebbe said, around here, there are a lot of vessels that are filled with liquid. There's wine, there's mashka, and there's other things. And even though the idea of a vessel is to contain these liquids, the purpose of these liquids is to drink them. And so the Rebbe said, I want everyone here to empty out all the vessels the cups, the bottles, anything that's containing liquid, empty it out. That was the instruction. And the Rebbe finished the signal with that, as usual with the bracha. And the Rebbe took his Kiddush cup and did this exactly what I'm going to do now. He started pushing the drops, like the droplets. After the wine was finished drinking, like emptied it completely. And then with one motion, as he's holding the cup like this, he grabbed the cup in his hand and turned it upside down. So the Rebbe was now holding his cup upside down. Up, like this. And everybody took their vessels, their cups which had wine and asher, and their bottles, and we started raising them to say l'chaim. That was common thing. But when everybody said l'chaim to the Rebbe would go like this. Acknowledge, say l'chaim, and with his hand. Here, the Rebbe didn't move his hand. The Rebbe moved his hand with the empty cup. To all the people said l'chaim, the Rebbe kept on pushing his cup like this. And so Chassidim understood that everybody not only should finish their vessel, but should hold up the vessel upside down like a Rebbe was doing. That's what Rebbe wanted. Within a few seconds, the entire 770, thousands of people were holding up upside down cups. And then it was begun. Our Zelda the Rebbe started swinging his hand with this cup. That was important. This song was going on and on, and the Rebbe was like this. It was like an amazing scene. And then the song stopped, and the Rebbe has his elbow on the table, and his cup is still being held in his hand upside down. And the Rebbe is trying to speak, and there is a tremendous noise because people had come in and people were just piling in and close on office. The crowd was too big, it was not set up properly, people were slipping and sliding, whoa, the Rebbe addressed that as well, the noise. Because everybody was super shocked. The Rebbe said, when I was in school, when I was in Chabad, they told the story of the mayor of the town when he wanted to go to sleep. So he sent out a message to the town to say, we'd like everybody to be quiet because the mayor is going to go to sleep. So everybody around the town was screaming, the mayor is trying to sleep! Be quiet! He said, now can you imagine that with the governor of a whole state? And then you can imagine that with a king. He says, with the whole country screaming, Shah, Shah, the Melech Yosef. Quiet. The king wants to sleep. You get to force down the rest of you. Just imagine how much sleep the king can get when everybody is screaming, Shah, Shah, be quiet. Which, that's the second issue. With that one. Anyway, then the Rebbe said like this. The Rebbe is still sitting, holding the cup up, so that everybody can see. The Rebbe said that when we look at the picture that the Rambam made of the Rebbe in the Beis HaMikdash, it had to have cups, the Torah says, and the cups were upside down. Why? Because the purpose of the Menorah was to bring illumination, not inside the Beis HaMikdash, but to the outside. So therefore, the cups were upside down in a gesture of pouring out. So the Rebbe today, we did this idea of making sure that the light goes everywhere around the world. Now, while that was very, wow, an unusual scene, something that you can't forget, the Rebbe would seem to be desperate that everybody does this, turns over their cups. What was really happening here was the Rebbe emptying out the treasure, because it was needed. trial coming. It was a serious trial. And what was hanging in the balance was not merely the library, which in and of itself is a treasure that cannot be measured. But it was who is in charge? Is the Rebbe in charge of this library? Is the Rebbe in charge of the movement? If the books belong to the movement and the Rebbe is in charge of the movement, then this is a direct challenge to the Rebbe. Now, I don't mean to the Rebbe's power and to the Rebbe's prestige and honor. For 35 years, the Rebbe was busy turning over the world. And if from heaven there was this challenge, and the Rebbe saw this coming from Shemayim, then does that invalidate all these decades of work? Because the Rebbe's not really, I don't want to say the rest of that statement. And so therefore, a lot of energy, light, flow of all things that came from the Rebbe. That year, Simchas Torah, the Rebbe's day, when Simchas Torah was absolutely the Rebbe's day, the Rebbe turned over the Pfeffer, basically saying, we are now going to pour energy. So this challenge, very painful challenge, to the movement and to the Rebbe himself, brought out extra added measures of answers, of treasures from heaven and from earth. And all this started right around Yud Shevat 1984. And therefore, it seems to me, this is just not my opinion, it seems to me that the Rebbe was addressing the idea of tzimtzum before tzimtzum, the highest levels of restrictions. Because, as the Rebbe explains in this chapter, in 15, which corresponds to this, and as the Rebbe explains at great length in the minor that he said 20 years before 1985, the one that he said in 1960, that the whole purpose of tzimtzum, the whole idea of restriction and constriction, and challenge in that way, is so that there should be revelation. You can't have a world without having all these steps of filter. And since you can't have this world, you can't have God coming into this world. So in order that there should be a revelation of God in this world, you have to go through some painful limitations. And I think that the Rebbe was saying this specifically in 85 because he was dealing with incredible limitations, challenges, restrictions, constrictions. But the point was to be prepared for a greater revelation. 2 years later, it was after the trial was over, the Lubavitch wins, the Rebbe wins, victorious. Why didn't he say, I don't want to deal with the tzimtzum. I don't want to deal with constrictions anymore. You know what? He threw it out. He said, why do you have to cliff? Why do you have to crawl over there? Okay, so now I've shared with you a little bit of my own feelings. But there's something much, much more important there. In this year, when we focus on that concept of this year, because it's 40 years later, so we're on that subject now. And we study what the Rebbe said 40 years ago. I am 100% sure that this is a year of much greater revelations. That the challenges that we have are ready to bring us the light and the energy purpose of me leaving my hat behind in a taxi or in a car was so I can speak to some non-Jewish people and make sure that they understand that our mission is to think positive and that challenges are only there to lead us to goodness, to godliness, to optimism. Yes, it's difficult. Cynicism is difficult. And the higher you go, it must be even more difficult. You're taking away from the essence of God. But yet, the whole purpose of these challenges is so that the vessels be poured, the contents of the vessel should come out, and there should be a flood of energy. So this year, the year that corresponds to that year of 1985, is a year for every person to turn over their cup, to pour out energy. Whether it is in our own lives, whether it is in the lives of the people that we come in contact with, there is, for this specific Yud Shevat year, there is blessings that are given to us to be able to achieve the essence, the pouring out of energy for the brothers that we need. But we got to get to work. We got to turn this over to God. We've got to study the Rebbe's prayer, and we've got to do the Rebbe's midterm, the Rebbe's campaign. We've got to meet people. We've got to speak to people. We've got to take those challenges. We've got to turn them into something good. Opportunities are going to be there because challenges are there. Those opportunities are there for us to make sure that the citizen, that the challenges help us reveal the deepest energies, the unseen, the treasures that are ready to come out of us. The rest is up to us. Whoever in this year is ready to let it pour. So let's receive and let's take this energy and do what we need to do with it for ourselves, for our community, for the whole surroundings, for the whole world. And that will certainly bring it much closer, hopefully much speedier. Kollel Eretz Hatzvi and Pfeffer.
Rabbi Lew, as the Rebbe actually shared, we mentioned 40 years ago, and as Rabbi Lew mentioned, how the Rebbe the play Rebbe. So the Rebbe actually gave a minor, an answer to the organizers of the Farbrengen on the night of Yud Shevat back 40 years ago. And this was the beginning of Shabbat, 1985. The Rebbe said, I'll mention it at the oil that the Farbrengen should be with success, etc. And then Yud Shevat, in response to those organizers of the Farbrengen that took place in Yud Shevat in 770, the Rebbe answered with 2 words, Hatzvi-Bais mamish, question mark. So as Rabbi Lew shared, we have to take everything that we heard at this Farbrengen, and we have to have a Kollel actual, tangible results, tangible inspiration that we're able to use in our own day-to-day life, in our own avodah, as Rabbi Lew mentioned with Tzvi, and doing Rebbe's work in this world, so that this will be the last Yud Shevat that we don't see the Rebbe in a physical way with our own eyes, and we should be said to be united with the Rebbe very soon. The Farbrengen is not over. We're not going to continue the Farbrengen at the tables here. Everyone, please continue sitting. We're going to move the tables together as we pass.
this or this one over here? Without the mic? Are you going to do this?
Yeah.
With the mic or without the mic?
Mute it for a second. It's on, no one can join the Zoom, but it's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on Twitter, it's on
Twitter.
Want to pull that
It's on X-Summit.
don't want it to fall down.
Excrement? What?
It's on, it's on a lot of platforms.
Take it off.
All for Ringen. It's been, I don't know, it's on average.
All right. The Nigunim department in this community needs a little bit fixing up.
What does?
Nigunim, this song, this doesn't seem to be an enthusiastic singing crowd here. Need a microphone?
There probably is on the screen, no? Oh, you mean for here? A bacher, I heard a bacher here say, if the mashpia needs a microphone, then they
It's bad news.
It ain't a Farbrengen.
Okay, another Michael. Left already.
What happened to Rabbi Alltime? Where did he go? He left.
I think I chased him away. I was talking Hasidus with him.
Oh.
I think he ran out.
I did it, I did it, Allah, ya, Allah, ya, ya, Allah, ya, I did it, Allah, I did it, Allah, ya, Allah, ya, I did it, Allah, ya, I did it, Allah, I did it, Allah, hey, I did it, Allah, ay, 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 I did it, Allah, na, 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 ay, na, 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 na. Ay, L'chaim. No? Come too. No microphone anymore. I spoke a whole Shabbos without a microphone, so. But the deal is you have to come in. Talking about restrictions and constrictions, I want to take this to a completely different side now. No more Kabbalah. We've talked a lot of Hasidus tonight and Kabbalah, Rebbe. Now, it's stories about the Rebbe now only. Two months ago, Yitas Kislev, I was in Boca Raton for Shabbos. And there is I wasn't in any of the Chabad houses. I was in the central Boca Raton synagogue, where there is a Lubavitch community there. And I sat there all afternoon until Mincha. Yitas Kislev was on Shabbos. And one of the guys asked me this question. Have you read the new book that came out, correspondences of Label Groner and the Rebbe? There is 3 books now that have come out called B'chadrei Torah Secha. B'chadrei Torah Secha, it's a great book. And it turns out that the Rebbe demanded from Label Groner that after Farbrengens he should think about what the Rebbe said, and if he has any issues and questions, he should ask the Rebbe, or he should also discuss it with other people. They should ask questions. The Rebbe wanted people to talk about what he was talking about. Eventually, in the late 70s and then throughout the 80s and until to this day, pamphlets come out every week where people have the platform to discuss and talk anything that the Rebbe had said. So it came out in print. So Label Groner, who obviously had a one-on-one access to the Rebbe at any time, would often, after Shabbos or after Farbrengen, would write a note to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said this and that and the other. And the Rebbe would often write it so that it should be in writing, so that those who transcribe the transcript should also have access to this extra. So now some of those were never given, and they don't appear in the transcripts. Some of those, the Rebbe spoke to him orally and not in writing. But there are hundreds of new insights that no one ever saw on different talks of the Rebbe or different sichos that are printed and published of the Rebbe that are just amazing. Questions and answers that follow-up questions and answers that the Rebbe asked on the Rashis and on the other, there's Rambam. It's all in Hebrew. And so the first volume is Bereshis Shmois, the second volume for Yikam Dvarim, and now a third volume just came out. That's about general Indian ideas in Torah.
These are questions Rabbi Groner asked the Rebbe and Rebbe
Yeah.
responded?
These are correspondences between Rabbi Groner, who wrote down questions, as the Rebbe instructed him
Were
to.
his own questions, others, or both?
Yes, it could be from others as well. I don't know, but there are responses from the Rebbe, sometimes pages long. And what they do in this book, they don't just decipher the Rebbe's handwriting. They give the whole background. What did the Rebbe say in the Sikha? What does it appear that he was asking? And how is the Rebbe responding to that? The book is made beautifully because it covers not just the answers. It gives the context of every single thing. Some of those things are very, difficult issues and subjects in Torah. And this is already 3 volumes and many more still to come that were in his treasures, in Rabbi Groner's, they were in his files. And then now, after he passed away, they were going through his files.
Could that be the notes that came out in the Chafei Mimer this year at the bottom? You see sometimes notes that are not footnotes.
No, that's not from him. Anyway, so the guy asked me if I've read them. Have you read these books? I said I'm in the middle of the second books now, and I'm steadily. Over Shabbos I usually read a couple of pages. It's heavy stuff, so I don't want to get myself too involved. But it's heavy stuff, but it's beautiful. It's how the Rebbe responds and translates different things. Anyway, so he said to me, this guy said to me, he's been reading this book, and he is shocked. He is somebody who was too young to remember the Rebbe. And he sees in this correspondence sometimes the Rebbe slamming. How many seconds did you spend thinking on this question? That kind of thing, which is just, it's just not the Rebbe that we know. And so he asked me, he says, can you explain what's going on over here? So I want to share this with you because it has a very important connection to Yud Shevat. I was very, very, very privileged to be in the team that was involved in transcribing the Sichos. I was working in the Yiddish Sichos with Simon Jacobson, the author of Towards a Meaningful Life. And I had to be trained, put it this way, in order for somebody to truly, especially somebody who's not yet, still younger. I was 18, 19 when I started this. The first thing is, I was familiar with the Rebbe's style for many years, because even when I was in England and in Israel and other places, the Rebbe would speak, and I would often write. So from the age of about 14, I was already writing for myself, not from memory, but as the Rebbe was speaking, I would be writing the notes for myself. I still have most of those notes. And basically putting together the sichos. This was very, very dear to me. This whole world of the Rebbe's talks was very important to me. So, just as a side, when I was 15 or 16, I was in 1980, so I was 16. It was time for me to leave England. So I told my father, this is already in Shvat time, I told my father, as for next year, I'm not asking you, I'm just telling you, I'm going to New York, to Olo Torah, because my whole life and my whole energy and my whole focus was the Rebbe. And I wanted to be in New York with the Rebbe and nowhere else. Unbeknownst to me, the people who were running the school that I was studying in, they wanted to help out. There was a call from Yerushalayim There's Yeshiva Torah Semes, an old yeshiva that started in Hebron in the times of the Rebbe Rashab, the oldest Lubavitch yeshiva after Lubavitch, after Tomchei Tmimim. And they wanted to make a yeshiva gedola. They always had a mesifta. They wanted to have for the older guys, and they asked yeshivas around the world to send them guys. Put it this way: with the years that I was there, it was about 70% guys from out of Israel, just a handful of Israeli guys. So there was the call was answered by different places. So the place in England decided that we all need to go to Israel. So I didn't know this at that time, and I had never been to Israel, and Israel didn't turn me on. I didn't have any appreciation for that. I was either too young, or I was very focused on the Rebbe, and I was just very focused on that kind of. And I was in New York many times, plenty of times, but Israel wasn't on the agenda, of course. Now it's a little different. I'm a little older and wiser, etc. So my father was in a dilemma because the school is saying he needs to go to Israel. The boy is saying he needs to go to New York. So I said to my father, do me a favor, I do not want you to write to the Rebbe to ask any questions here, because there's no questions. It's settled. It's clear. So what did my father do? He wrote to the Rebbe. He wrote to the Rebbe, and he wrote to the Rebbe that the Hanhola, the administration is saying that we need to go to Israel. Now, the reason is because Israel was calling for it, really. They wanted to build this yeshiva up in Israel. And the boy wants to go to New York because his whole life is... my father told me he described my passion and my life and everything else. And he took a couple of my transcripts that I had written and sent them to the Rebbe. He says, this is what he's doing. And the Rebbe answered 3 words. 3 words. K'meforsim ka'atzas anhola. It's well known that you follow what the administration says. I said to my father, I asked you not to do this. I knew something drastic, awful can happen. He says, you're my first child, my oldest child. I'm sending you away from home now, and I don't make any moves without consulting the Rebbe, and I had to do this. I said, you should know that you're sending me into Gullus, into Yerushalayim. And it was Gullus every day. I hated every minute of those years. Even Rabbi Munshine was there. His father would hang around in the yeshiva. That was a ray of sunshine, but otherwise it was a mess. I hated the food, I hated the people, I hated the language, I hated just every part of it.
Could have been in South Africa.
I've got news for you. I was in South Africa. but the Rebbe sent me directly to South Africa. That was a whole different story. That was different. Anyway, the South African story is for a different time. That's a long story that is, in and of itself, a very, very interesting story. But that's not for now. Anyway, but when I left Israel, it was Zion of 1982. And I said, I will never come back to this country until Mashiach. And then I grew up. I was Taras Nedarim. And 23 years later, I went. And it was a different experience, obviously. I wasn't going kicking and screaming, and I was older and mature enough to appreciate the Kedusha and the different things over there. There are idiotic things over there, but there's also just the Kedusha things as well. It's a holy land at the end of the day. Anyway. I came out of there, and I came to New York in 1982. And I was, within a few months, I was already in that office. This was my dream, to do any work in that office, to be involved in the Rebbe's sichos, in the transcripts of the Rebbe. It was my lifetime dream. Rabbi Altein's father was involved at that time. He would write the Rashi sichos. That's when I got to know Rabbi Altein. I don't know if anybody here knows Rabbi Altein's father, but I Farbrengen in the shul that he's the rabbi 2 years ago. And when I sat down, he knows me from way back then, but when I sat down next to him, I said, I want you to know that I'm probably one of your biggest fans in the world. He looked at me. His father doesn't know what excitement means in mundane matters. So he said, what? What do you mean? I said, I know you. Most of the world doesn't. But I really do know you. And you are an incredibly special person, with a gifted, talented chassid that has so much to offer, except he doesn't do it that much. But he's just an amazing man. Anyway, I needed to get that in. I got some brownie points with So these were the type of people that were hanging around there. You understand? These were mentors. These were people that I really looked up to as Hasidim and as Chosrim, as people who were able to retain the sichos that the Rebbe spoke on Shabbos. And I learned so much from them because I asked and I delved. And one of the most important thing, if not one of the most important element of remembering, of being able to stand there for hours and remember the thing, the first and absolute, without any question, the first step is never think along with the Rebbe, which is counterintuitive to any human intelligence. When somebody tells you something, if somebody stops you and says, I have a question, immediately your brain turns to, I'm going to be ready to answer this question. And as the question moves on, you are not thinking about the question. You are already thinking about the answer. And then the person may tell you, wait, I didn't ask you that. I meant this. You say, yeah. Your thoughts are, somebody poses a riddle to you. Before they finish the riddle, you're already thinking along. If you did that with the Rebbe, you have no chance. You have to be an upside down, empty keli. Completely empty. You are just a sponge. All you do is absorb listen to what he is saying. Don't say, but there's a Rashi that says something different. Or I know of a Gemara, what does he mean by that? Never. Just keep standing. You'll notice that all those people who were the ones who remembered, the Chosrim and these kind of people, you never saw them doing this. You always saw them standing straight and focused without moving. You can see them, their concentration is so strong. You see that, you watch Rabbi Yoel, even from a weekly Farbrengen where you didn't have to remember because it was all recorded. You'll see that style of stop your mind from running. Without that, you fill yourself with your own thoughts, and you can end up missing one line, which is really the line that you need to put everything together. You'll miss that. And so you can't miss anything. So that was the first step. Again, this is a training. It wasn't just simply, you got a good memory, go there. That doesn't help. Number one. Number two, you also had to review non-stop. There was a guy who stood right on top of me who didn't understand Yiddish. And so as soon as the Rebbe would finish speaking, I would turn around and start immediately telling him over what the sikha was, what the Rebbe said.
In Hebrew.
In English. He didn't understand Yiddish.
Hebrew he understood, but English he also understood.
He didn't understand a word of Hebrew. He understood only English. And I couldn't speak Hebrew either. I speak Hebrew now. I on purpose did not learn a word of Hebrew when I was in Israel. I only learned Hebrew after I left Israel. Now I can speak fluent Hebrew. But I couldn't speak a word of Hebrew then. Anyway, it was in English. And it really helped me. Then when the Farbrengen was over, Rabbi Altein's father we would do a quick chazara, also in English, and I would join that. Then I would go to Simon Jacobson's house, and we would do it again. So 4 or 5 times you were reviewing what the Rebbe said. Without that, you're lost. You're finished. Doesn't matter how good your memory is. There's so many things and so many points, hours worth of stuff that's in your mind. Another thing, I didn't eat. You start making kiddush and start putting cholent in your system, the cholent will be remembering, not you. Another thing, I slept very well. I used to have 190 proof vodka in my room or in a friend's room. And I don't like the taste of it, but I would mix it with some orange juice, drink it, and then go hit the sack because it was noisy in the dorm on Friday. Well, dorm was always noisy, but Friday night, it was crazy till 2, 3 in the morning. And I'm a light sleeper, so down I went. And I slept very well every Friday night. By 12 o'clock I was in bed, and so I had at least a good 8, 9 hours sleep. So again, there was no distractions. You had to work on yourself to be able to even keep up with this. And so I was very involved.
Wait, so how did you add to what the big guys were?
I didn't add any.
It was Rebbe.
Who am I? No.
Nachman?
Rebbe was not an active writer.
Not writing.
Rebbe was not a writer.
But I'm saying what you guys came out with to send into the Rebbe. You were part of that?
Yes, and I was also part of I started this thing called Teichen Kotzer, that on Sunday morning you have a transcript, a brief synopsis.
We used to get it on the fax.
Yes, it comes in the fax, and it would be about 10 pages. So everything was brief. We didn't have to go through everything the Rebbe said, because if there was a line that we didn't understand, we just didn't have it. This wasn't the official. It was just to send it around the world, so people should have a better idea of what happened on the Farbrengen. Instead of somebody saying for 3 minutes, Rebbe spoke about Tzimtzum, what did he say about the Tzimtzum, etc.
The chazara that you did by Simon's house was after the main chazara, the Rebbe?
Rebbe's chazara was always on Saturday night.
You were there?
I was never there.
Oh.
Not never. But once I started writing this thing on Saturday night, we needed to finish it as quick as possible so it could be edited and printed and sent out.
Wait.
So we started.
Send it into the Rebbe? Or
No, not that.
Send it out?
I'm talking about the Saturday night activity. We worked until it was finished. And we had to start as soon as Shabbos was over.
You went straight to Simon's house.
We went to Simon's house after the Farbrengen on Shabbos to eat lunch there. Then Shabbos ended another hour or 2 later, we went straight to the office to work.
Sometimes lunch was after Shabbos was over.
Yes,
I'm
so
sorry,
we did that.
I'm just asking, who was the we that you're saying?
It was a couple of people, Simon Jacobson and his brother at some
Rabbi
point.
Nachman?
Who? Nachman Shapiro was not involved. He was never involved in that. He was involved in writing the Likutei Sichos, not the Hanachos. Rabbi Nachman Shapiro was not one of the writers of the Ma'amachut.
No.
He's Ma'amachut.
Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Me too.
How was he Ma'amachut?
Paris.
Oh, Paris married? Oh, nice. So his older brother is Moshe, married to my sister. And not only that, but I have a lot of other connections to the Rabbi. I'm very, very close with Rabbi Nachman Shapiro. Anyway, Chaim. And so there were things that we wrote into the Rebbe that we didn't understand. There were some things that the Rebbe had said, and sometimes in the Chazara, these questions would come up. Somebody would say, no, he said it this way, somebody would say it that way. Then with other Chazaras, and it wasn't defined properly. Or when we started opening up the books to put things together, it wasn't consistent with something that was written by the Mittler Rebbe and here and there. There were questions that would arise. I can't say every single Farbrengen, but quite often. Either in the Maimer or in the Sichos, somewhere in the Rashis, somewhere along the line, there could have been questions. And so we would work very hard, research the thing. And you needed a team. There's a whole team there. and we would research their issues, and then we would type up a question to the Rebbe. V'loi tafasnu, we didn't grasp quite the answer, or we don't remember the Rebbe answering this point, or it says this somewhere else. How do we fit it into what the Rebbe had said over here? Or we had trouble with this point, and so this is the way we transcribed it. Here's 2 or 3 chapters. Can the Rebbe help us make sure that this is what the Rebbe intended to say? That kind of thing. So there was a constant correspondence. In addition to that, there was also whole sichas that were given into the Rebbe for his editing. In addition to questions, there was the Rebbe's editing of the sichas. And every once in a while, usually the Rebbe would answer very, very quickly, very briefly, within 1 or 2 words, take your words, and you had the answer very quickly. We don't remember the Rebbe answering. I didn't answer, and I'm leaving it to next Shabbos, or next Farbrengen. The Rebbe could have answered that.
Wow.
One time the Rebbe wrote, I never said this, Musafin kihil chosin. I never used the word kihil chosin. Befeder shlo yomarti kihil chosin. I didn't say it. And so on and so forth. And sometimes we got over our heads. I mean, slammed. For example, the Rebbe said a sikha on Asara B'Tevis, on a fast day. The Rebbe always spoke on a fast day. In 1984, on Tafshin Mem Daled, it was a Friday. That's the only Friday fast from the time that the Rebbe began speaking on fast days until the Rebbe's stroke. So that's the only time. And the Rebbe spoke pretty quickly because it was Erev Shabbat. The Rebbe spoke for an hour. And it was a wild time by the Rebbe. The Rebbe had used a language then that was very, very sharp about people not caring about what he's saying and not paying attention and so on and so forth. And we gave in the transcript of the Sikha for the Rebbe to edit. There's, on the top of the Sikha, there's a big space, like margins, before the Sikha starts. And the Rebbe filled the whole margins by saying as follows: where did you find such a transcript from? Even after the Rebbe had edited the whole thing, even after all my edits, the Rebbe said, all my patches, you put it in lattice, all my patches.
How do you say patches? In what word?
In Yiddish.
What word?
Lattice.
Lattice.
Even after all these lattice, Aza oiskuk yeshla. It looks awful. Don't write that this has been edited. And on the side, it's like terrible. And Simon, poor Simon, was beside himself. He didn't know what to do with himself. And after about a half hour of this, he was just too broken, so he decided to go to Rabbi Altein's father and Nachman, to their office, which was around the corner, on the same floor, and to see what could he do. So he folded up the piece. He didn't even want to show it to anybody. He folded it up, and he knocked on the door, and he says, I just got such a Misha Beirach from the Rebbe. Oh my God. So they said, what did he write? He says, I'm too embarrassed. He said, come on, we're friends over here. We deal with it. So he opened it up, and he looked at it, and they started laughing. They said, we get this every week. I've seen slams like that, like really heavy duty telling offs from the Rebbe like this. But the Rebbe didn't do that in public hardly. He certainly wouldn't have said, how much time did you spend on this? That kind of thing. It's like sarcasm, more than telling off, like, what are you giving to me here? So he was wondering, this guy was wondering how the Rebbe was treating Label Grona. I said that anybody who worked with the Rebbe had to be ready for this kind of reaction. Why is that? And why did we not see that? as invective, as curses, as a problem? And the answer is, and this is where the point comes in. The Rebbe spent every minute, every moment of his very, very focused. When the Rebbe was into something, he was completely in it, no matter what it was, and it was as if the rest of the world didn't exist at that time. When he saw the people go by dollars, it could have been 1 second, but that 1 second was you, and you were the world. He was in everything he did. There was no such thing as half things. And that's how it was in his minutes as well. Every moment was exact like that. And so if you had the privilege of being called in to work with the Rebbe, that means that you had to be exact yourself. You weren't chosen to work with the Rebbe. I'm talking now about the secretaries of Rabbi Groner Klein, these people. You weren't chosen so that you can give your opinions for consultation. You were there so that you can help the Rebbe use the time that's so precious to him in the proper way. And if you're going to waste his time on things that were irrelevant or the things that weren't researched properly, then you could expect the Rebbe to say, I'm sorry, but you are in a position now where you need to really be conscious of what you're doing. You send me half things over here, or things are not written properly, or not written well. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to tell you straight out that my time is very precious, and you're wasting it. It's a privilege to be considered in that kind of category, of where the Rebbe can say to you, I need you to be one of my soldiers here and stand on guard. And not everybody would have been able to handle this. Like this shliach who said, what is going on? I can't believe this. Couldn't believe what he was reading. So to illustrate this, I'll share with you this story. Rabbi Leibel Groner, his grandson is married to my daughter. And so we met at certain occasions for family simchas. And he ended up hanging around in my house for a couple of days here, a couple of days there, and I milked him. I asked him, I know what to ask. And I can't say Rabbi Groner was completely reliable. He didn't have a photographic memory. But the questions that I asked him did not reflect something that he had to remember every detail. And I would sit with him literally for hours on end. And one time, you see, because I had access to him, I was able to ask him different questions. So I asked him the question, I said, there's something with you and the Rebbe and baseball. I said, hey, I hear all kinds of stories. No, it's not the famous story that you're thinking of the spectators. No. That's a different person in a different time. I said, there's a story of baseball with the Yankees or something. He says, I'll tell you the story. Then he shares with me this story. In 1947, the Dodgers played the Yankees in the World Series. For the first time, 2 New York teams.
The Subway Series.
Right, became the Subway Series. So the 2 New York teams played in the Baseball World Series. It went 7 games, and New York was on fire. It went 7 games, and the Yankees beat the Dodgers in Game 7. So this is in 1947, Tafshin Ches. So in the fall of Tafshin Ches, the end of 1947. So when Leibel Groner walked into the Rebbe's office the next morning, the newspaper was over one of the chairs, was folded over one of the chairs. And the back page had whatever it did, that it had something about the Dodgers losing or the Yankees winning in the back page. So the Rebbe pointed to the newspaper, and he says to Leib Grona, what do you say? Knowing that Leib Grona is a big baseball fan. What do you say? So Leib Grona says, very happy. I'm a Yankee fan. So the Rebbe said, the Dodgers played on Empire Boulevard.
The hometown.
In Crown Heights.
The hometown team.
In Polo, not Polo Grounds, Ebbets Field, on Empire Boulevard.
The hometown.
They're right here, and the Yankees are playing somewhere down there. So how does it work out that you are here in Brooklyn and yet you're a fan of the team over there? Huh?
Empire what? What was the...
And it's not actually Empire, but it's the next block over where
One
Risen
way or
has that
another,
big
it's
thing.
the hometown team.
It's right after, it's the next block after Empire. But it's one of these side streets where there's a big gas station, whatever. Anyway. Huh? So the Rebbe asked him, how does it work that you...
And the answer to Rebbe?
So he says to me, the Rebbe says to me, I went like this, he says, I don't want to start discussing baseball with the Rebbe, explaining to him that the Yankees are the winning team and the basketball tradition, the Babe Ruth, and all this stuff. And it's not, let's get into this. The Rebbe's a tzaddik, the Rebbe's not, So I just shrugged my shoulders, I smiled, and finished. That's the story, he says. So I said to him, the Yankees and the Dodgers played in the World Series quite a few times after that. And in 1955, the Dodgers, the only time the Dodgers won was in 1955. So I said...
You knew that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I said to him, you know that in 1955, I said it to Leib Grona, so you know that in 1955, the Dodgers did beat the Yankees that one time that the Brooklyn beat New York, beat the Yankees. I said, did the Rebbe sort of bring up something there? Did it come back, this discussion? And Leib Grona looks at me and he says, are you crazy? And I said, what? What did I do wrong here? He says, let me tell you this. The Frierdiker Rebbe passed away on Shabbos, Yud Shevat. It was a Shabbos. And it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. I was a bacher, says Leib Grona. He got married in 1954. So 1950, he was a bacher. And I used to go in. The Rebbe asked me to come in on Shabbos, every Shabbos, after davening. So I came in after davening. Davening was late. Nobody knew what to do. Everybody was in complete and utter shock, as you can imagine. Frierdiker Rebbe passed away an hour ago. This davening was supposed to start at 10 o'clock. And where are we going with this? And the Rebbe was the one who said, we got to daven. Shachris, let's go. Daven Shachris. So there was Shachris. And after Shachris, Rebbe Grona says, I came to see the Rebbe like I did every Shabbos. After Shachris, the Rebbe was still in his talus. So I knocked on the door and I walked in. And he says, I froze. I froze. He says, I did not recognize him. He changed completely. He says, from then on, he became the Rebbe. He wasn't just a tzaddik and a Talmud Chacham and a wise, righteous, holy man. He was a Rebbe. And he looked different. And from that moment on, he said, from that moment on, there was not a chance that there would be a second of anything other than the absolute focus. Not even a minute of nothing. So I said to Leib Grona, I said, it's a reference from the Torah, Parshas Miketz. I want to mention something that I did that you may not approve of. This was in 1991, and I had a meeting with one of the guys who was hanging around over there. And the meeting was held on the second floor where the Frierdiker Rebbe's apartment was, not in anywhere, just on the steps, on the balcony up there, on the stair, up the staircase.
Landing, on the
The
landing.
Yeah. And so we're standing there, we're talking. It was a private place, private meeting. And I hear some noise, some rattling of the door. So I looked over and I see Lebergronas coming in to that area right in front of the Rebbe's office, the Rebbe's room. And he stops in front of the Rebbe's room. I'm looking.
You're looking down.
I'm looking down. He does not know that I'm seeing him.
Is the stairs are going to happen?
Yes, the stairs that go up, and I go up to a landing.
So he's looking down
I'm
where
looking-
the Rebbe's room was.
I'm looking down the landing, and I'm seeing Lebergrona, and he's standing in front of the Rebbe's door. This is 1991, almost 50 years after he started working in the Rebbe's office. And he starts like this. And then he starts like, you can see he's like brushing himself, and then he's putting his hands again in his head. And I'm watching this, and I'm stupefied. I can't believe it. For a whole minute, he's making these preparations, and he has no clue that I'm watching this. I'm standing from the second floor, and I'm telling this to him now. I'm saying, I'm watching you preparing yourself to go into the Rebbe's room, and I was blown away by, usually just knock on the door, you couldn't walk in there. You were like, you seemed to be very, very tensed up. So he said to me, Lebergrona said to me like this. He says, I want you to know this. Every single time, without exception, that we walked into the Rebbe's room as secretaries, you were immediately transported into the Rebbe's world. Sometimes, most of the time, you were taken to heaven. Sorry, he didn't say heaven. So most of the time you were taken to Shamayim. And some of the times you were taken to hell. That's the words he said. I said, hell? He said, when the Rebbe was unhappy about something, and the Rebbe did not want to say it publicly or write about it, we got it. That was hell, because you don't know what to do. But most of the time was Shamayim. Like you were literally in a world that was different than anything that you could know. So I said to him, could you please share with me just one example of that? He says, that's where the famous line from Rabbi Chodakov comes in, that the Rebbe once said about the Frierdiker Rebbe, the name of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that there are three, before Rabbi Benjamin Klein tells this story, before he was hired to work, Rabbi Chodakov told him, in the name of the Rebbe, who said it in the name of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that there are three types of secret people. One type of a person who has a secret, he says, I have a secret, but you're not going to hear. Another type of person doesn't say a word, but when you look at that person, you can tell that they have something that they're holding. The third type of a person is a type of person that even when you look at them, you have no clue that's what's brewing inside. Now, that's the type of person, said Rabbi Chodakov to Rabbi Klein, that's the kind of person that is going to be hired to work over here. And if you can't do that, if you can't guarantee that, you can't work here. Because there are things that are going to be flying around over here that cannot be told. Ebergona says, I have to use that clause. That's going down with me to my grave. I cannot disclose. That's private, and just take it from me that any of us that walked in there as a maskir, as a secretary of the Rebbe, started working in there, you were transported to the Rebbe's world. And in the Rebbe's world, it was literally Shamayim. But he wouldn't give me any kind of example.
That's a secret. He won't tell anything.
They wouldn't, none of them said a word about that. I just know that this thing existed, I just don't know what, and I obviously wasn't. In other words, there were people who were really, really close enough that the Rebbe trusted them to to be exposed to these things, and yet you don't know about it. It was within that group. Into that group of those that the Rebbe considered people who are vessels to receive these kind of things, the Rebbe acted in a much more like closer, like he was able to express himself in that way. On the other hand, when they were publishing pictures of the Rebbe, the official picture until the mid-80s was approved by the Rebbe. So you'll notice that there's a picture, a black and white picture of the Rebbe on the side, taken in 1959 when the Rebbe was in Yechidus in his room by, I think he was meeting one of the mayors of New York or something. Anyway, there's this picture that appears for about 15 years of the Rebbe, black and white, very striking, beautiful picture. When it came time for the next picture, they brought a similar picture in. There's Rabbi Yudel Krinsky, he's the one who tells this story. He says he brought him to the Rebbe. I heard it from Manis Friedman, but I asked Yudel himself. They brought it into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, "Is there no smiling picture? All my pictures need to be smiling." That's what the Rebbe said then. In other words, the Rebbe wanted to show the world chesed, ahava, love. But to people who knew the Rebbe closely, the Rebbe felt it's okay to deal with them like on a one-on-one kind of way, so that you can also get to know the Rebbe's side.
Wait. So it's connected to the Dodgers?
Huh?
You're going to connect this back to the Dodgers?
I can't stand the Dodgers. What do you think the Dodgers?
Whatever, the Yankees, the Dodgers.
I'm a Yankee fan. So, my friends, Yud Shevat, Yud Aleph, Tafshin Yud Aleph is when the Rebbe officially accepted it, but the Rebbe couldn't help it. Yud Shevat, Tafshin Yud, a few hours after, when Leib Grona saw the Rebbe, he had been walking into the Rebbe's office every day, doing menial job. He would pack envelopes or whatever. He would help the Rebbe out, and he could recognize the Rebbe. It became a Rebbe on that day, and it's a different category. And during the trial, this is one of the things that I didn't mention before, but during the trial, the Rebbe sent out a whole page defining what is a Rebbe. To get that from the Rebbe is priceless.
Priceless.
So precious. It could only have come because of the challenge.
Where do I find that?
It's not a hidden thing. Rabbi Oltan, I'm sure, will be able to get a hold of it. It's Iksav Yav from the Rebbe, which says, Tafkidoi shel Rebbe, what is a Rebbe? How would you define a Rebbe? Mesiras Nefesh, Mamish, yeah, it's not hard to find. Mesiras Nefesh, Mamish, and the different categories. You don't have your own life until you've settled everything outside of it, etc., etc., etc. You're not your own person.
So what's the difference between the Rebbe and the Chazan? What's the difference? We also don't have our own life outside of the Rebbe.
Oh, you have a wife, you have kids, you have a job, you have everything else? No.
Nothing outside of the Rebbe. All that stuff is included in Rebbe.
But you're busy with that stuff, and the Rebbe's busy not with
No,
wife
I
and
understand, but I'm just saying what's the difference? That's his level,
kids. Yes.
and this is my level. But one way or the other, I don't have for myself, and he doesn't have for himself.
That's because you're a Shlamazel, so you don't have anything for yourself. The Rebbe is the most accomplished person, and yet he's nothing of his own. It's all devoted to everything else.
Okay.
His devotion is to completely taking care of all that responsibility that he took on his shoulders, which is basically the whole world.
Bezalel, you were polishing gold coins.
What?
You polished gold coins and gave to the Rebbe?
What?
Gold coins?
Coins you gave to the Rebbe?
I didn't polish them.
He just gave them.
Why are you giving gold coins to the Rebbe?
What?
Why are you giving gold coins to the Rebbe?
What? Well, you really want to hear the story?
Sure.
When I first became a Baal Tshuva, I was in Crown Heights.
You about sure?
And this guy That was. I am
He used to be a Baal Tshuva.
I am a certified Baal Tshuva. I once asked Rabbi Reichek Kollel Sholem. I said, Rabbi, how do I do tshuva? He said, you did tshuva already. I am a certified Baal Tshuva. So this guy Avram Kamen, I don't know if he's still in the world. I don't think he ever got married because he was an older Kohen. One time he came to me, he said, let's learn the Mishnah. So he learned the Mishnah with me. Hazav kan as a kesef. Kesef ain't no kan as a zav. So I said to myself, oh, gold buys money.
So it doesn't really mean that.
I'm just telling you, I was an idiot. I was a complete idiot. So I said, oh, so at that time gold was $200 an ounce. So I started buying gold. And all of a sudden it went up, and to make a long story short, it went up to $800 an ounce. And what I was doing as I bought it, I would take it to a pawn shop, and I would borrow half, and I would buy more. So finally, and it went up, so finally I got scared. I said, what am I going to do? I have all this stuff, and how am I going to handle it? So I sent it into the boss. And that's the story. How he was able to send gold coins into the Rebbe.
Treasure into the Rebbe. That's why you sent the whole gold.
Whatever I have, I sent it in.
Well, that's why you don't have anything.
No, I have everything. But so you asked, I wouldn't come out and say, oh, but that's a fact. That's what happened.
That's beautiful.
L'chaim l'bracha, l'chaim chaim. Shlimon v'shiach mem. And the Rebbe doesn't remain a Baal Chov. I can tell you that.
I got a letter from the Rebbe about 5 years ago.
Who did?
You.
Yeah.
A letter?
Huh?
In the mail?
Yeah.
What happened was, I went to a chasana of Yossi Rosenblum.
Yossi Rosenblum?
He was making a chasana a few years ago.
He was one of the other guys who was in South Africa.
Oh.
Yossi Rosenblum.
So
This is Yossi Rosenblum.
I went there, and I never go up to the chuppah. I just never do it. But something, I went up and they were going around with the candles, and I told them Mazel Tov. He said, did you hear?
Yeah.
I said, did I hear what? He said, there's this guy here, Avrami Simpson,
Okay.
and he has a letter for you from the Rebbe.
$5 years ago.
That was a few years ago. I don't remember exactly how many years ago, 5 years, 6 years, however many years it was. And he hands me this letter. And what happened was I sent in a thing to the Rebbe, and they sent it to me, and it was the wrong address, and it went back. And he was going through his father's papers, and he finds this letter, and he asked Yossi Rosenblum, do you know this guy? Oh yeah, that's what. So, and he was invited to the wedding, and he hand carried this letter and handed it to me.
What did it say in the letter?
Wait.
Oh.
The date on the letter was the day I got it.
How about that?
Was Chav Teves.
Uh-huh.
I had sent into the Rebbe whatever I sent in on Hey Teves, and I got this letter back on Chav Teves, and it was dated the same day the Rebbe sent it to me. So, if Rabbi Lew, if this story happened to Rabbi Lew, so you can say, okay, obviously Rabbi Lew is connected to the Rebbe, but you can imagine this story happened to the Shmendrik of Shmendrachim. It means the Rebbe cares about each one of us, every day, all the time. And that's the proof of it.
Awesome. That brings me to my other point then. My friend over here asked me, Rabbi Marcus asked me a question before. And the question was, my father is well known in these areas in Pittsburgh, comes here a lot. And your father, you said, you described my father as very big shoes to follow or to fill.
Oh.
Big
Why,
man.
how you would even try that?
So he asked me, in my mind, was I following my father's footsteps when I decided to do to become who I became. And what he didn't realize, that this is not a one word answer, but this is a whole story.
You didn't realize it, Mark?
It's
He really isn't here for the answer.
the only reason why he stayed this long is to
You guys find out.
not only that, but it connects right away with what you just said. So came out of Israel, I came to New York, and I was,
Who was that? Shalema was already there.
Shalema was the general Rosh Hashiva, but he wasn't really involved on a daily basis. It was, Tuvia Zilbershom was there, and Fischer Offen, Zelig Feldman, some very good characters were there. It was Yerushalayim thicker thing, but it had a lot of good stuff in there. David Dubov was one of the, and a few other chevra.
So that was what you hated there?
I
You
hated
were
it.
still in the hate?
Yes, I hated every minute. Hated every minute of it, and I left. I came to New York, and I was living the dream. I was in Ola Torah. I was davening with the Rebbe on Shabbos. Weekday you had to daven in yeshiva, but you went for kriya, for the kriya Torah. You went
Monday and Thursday?
every Monday and
Was the
Thursday.
Meir view there?
No. Mincha Marv was disruption. Kriya Torah you were only allowed to go if you were Shir Dalet.
If you were what?
If
You're
in
down.
the highest class. The other classes, if
Down
they,
the whole Shabbos there?
Daven Shach was a dominion.
Down Shabbos with the many the days that the Rebbe went to prayer.
Yeah. And of course, the Farbrengens and the Shabbos and everything else, I was living the life. I wasn't yet involved in the Hanochas. It was right before that. It was right before I got involved in the transcripts area and working in the Sikhs. So I was a bacher in Ola Torah, and by the time I turned 18, just one more thing about Israel. So at the end of the first year, 1981, I spoke to my father. It was my birthday in Sivan. And my father said to me, the Gzeira is over. I will not ask the Rebbe about next year. You are free to go to Ola Torah.
Wow.
Go to New York. I said, no, I'm staying the second year. I chose to stay the second year.
Why?
Because the teachers of Nigla and of Chassidus, Rabbi Offen was the Chassidus, were really, really top of the line, best that I've ever had, and they were. And it set me on a path of being able to learn in a whole different way. And I was very grateful for that time. So I actually stayed a second year because I chose. The truth is, I only wanted to stay a half a year and then go to New York already for Pesach and stay. My father says, no, now you have to stay the rest of the year. Anyway, so I put my foot in my mouth too many times. Anyway, back to this. So here I am in New York, finally, after 2 years of absolute bitter gullus in Yerushalayim. And my mind is beginning to start thinking about who I am. I was only 18. And it's starting to bother me. Who are you? What are you? Where are you going in life?
That's called a bar das.
No, that's called waking
according
up.
to
It's
the
called
Frierdiker
waking up.
Rebbe,
It's
it's
called
called
waking
bar
up. Waking up. I was very bothered, perturbed. That is a better word, by who I am. And I knew my father was a world figure who goes around the world and speaks and Farbrengens and his consultation, and he runs a school and et cetera, and he's a top shliach, and the Rebbe shows him quite a bit of attention and all of that. And my grandfather, even more than that. My grandfather, my mother's father, Zalman Jaffe, was an exceptional character and had an unparalleled relationship with the Rebbe and the Rebbes. But who am I? Am I a kind of person that's just going to fly on the coattails of the people who are ahead of me? And I was struggling with that. I was really struggling for a few weeks with this idea. Like, where I knew, the first thing I knew is I'm not going to be my father. Let me put that better. I'm not going to be my father by simply just not doing anything. In other words,
A born chassid.
yeah,
What they call a born chassid.
I got the spoon in my mouth. That's not going to happen.
I didn't mean that, by the way.
I know you didn't, but I'm giving you the whole story here because the story is so valuable.
But as far as like all his accomplishments and the way he went about his shlichus, with the teaching.
No.
Some people have it.
So,
Some people
so
don't
you say
have it.
I obviously received with my mother's milk. I received quite a bit of connection and commitment to the Rebbe and everything else, but I'm a kind of person that I learned later that I have to have my path. I'm very similar to him, I think, I was told, but I'm also quite different than him. Anyway, I was actually struggling with this. And I was, like, a few weeks went by and I wasn't getting anywhere. I didn't know how to think these things through. This is the kind of thing you need to talk about with a mashpia or with a friend. And, you know, I was just in Torah for a few months. I didn't have the people that you could really discuss this with. And then came Shabbos Shmois, Tafshin Mem Gimel. And that Shabbos, the Rebbe said a Rashi Siddur about, in the Parsha, you have the story of Hashem meeting Moshe at the burning bush. And he tells him, you are the one who I've chosen. And he responds in there's 5 responses in the Torah. The first one is, Mi Anochi, who am I? And Hashem says, it's not you, it's me. I'm going with you. I'm the one who's sending you. I'm with you. Then comes the second thing. When you read the second question, or the second response of Moshe, this is where, you know, the other 3 you say he's looking for excuses. But this one, you stop in your tracks. Because he says to Hashem, I'm going to come to Bnei Yisrael. And I'm going to tell them, Hashem, that God, the God of your ancestors, sent me to you. And va'omru li ma shemoy, they're going to say to me, what's his name? Ma oymar aleichem, what should I tell them? What does Hashem respond? Vayomer aleikim, Ehyeh asher ehyeh. And tell them, Ehyeh sent you. So, Rashi, and he says, this is my name and this is how you remember me. But the word olam is missing a vav, which means, you can read it as lahelam, it's a hidden. And so from here you learn, says Rashi, that when you say Hashem's name, you don't pronounce it with the Yud Kei Vav Kei, but you say other, you substitute it because it's supposed to be hidden. So the Rebbe says, how does Rashi come in with this halacha over here? What's he doing here with this halacha? Among the several questions that the Rebbe asked, that's like the central, there was always a foundational question. And the Rebbe answered this question by saying, what's bothering Rashi here really is the absurd response of Moshe. He's saying to Hashem, Hashem elokei avosechem shlachani aleichem. He's saying that I'm going to tell the Jewish people that God sent me to you. And they're going to answer me, what's his name? Really? What's his name? Is that going to be the first reaction of the people? And Moshe, you don't know God's name? You have to ask him. Mo Oimar Alei, what should I tell him? Ask a 5-year-old kid, said the Rebbe. He'll say Hashem, Elokim, Elokeinu, Shakai. There are all kinds of names everybody knows. Moshe doesn't know any names of God. And how does God respond? A name that nobody ever heard before. And that he never uses again. This whole thing doesn't make any sense. So what is Moshe really saying over here? And the Rebbe said that when you have a name, what's a name? The person himself doesn't need a name. Your name is for identity, for others to know, to identify you. That's what the name is for. And so, what does Hashem need all these names? So it says in the Gemara, Lefi Ma'asai Ani Nikra. I'm called according to my actions. Sometimes Hashem is benevolent, and sometimes it's strict, and sometimes it's whatever. So the names represent the different tendencies, identities of Hashem. The name is an identity. Said the Rebbe, when Moshe Rabbeinu was talking to Hashem, he says to Hashem, I am going to come to the Bnei Yisrael. I'm going to tell them, Hashem, my God sent me to you. They're going to ask me, what's his name? What kind of behavior? Which identity is this? What kind of God is this? We're sitting in prison for hundreds of years. And Paro is bathing in the blood of the Jewish people. The Rebbe burst out crying. And the Rebbe had a napkin. The Rebbe threw down the napkin. The Rebbe was saying, how much longer? Simcha hat getroffen. Oh, a great simcha has happened here. God sent you to me. Wo is given? The Rebbe thundered. Where has he been all these years? Mo Oimar Alei, what should I say to them? How am I supposed to answer this question? And the Rebbe was crying. Heavy cries. So Hashem says to him, I am there with them. But it's hidden. That's why Rashi uses this halacha here. Because God's name is hidden means that his whole identity is hidden. But it doesn't mean that he's not there. It just means that it's concealed, it's not available. You can't see it at that time. That was basically the point. It's printed in Likutei Sichos, Chavov, the third Sicha for Pasha Shmais. That was the Sicha. But I heard maybe hundreds of Rashi Sichas from the Rebbe. That was one of the Sichas that I can never forget. Because it turned my kishkas upside down. And I felt like the Rebbe was talking to me. I felt like the Rebbe was saying, you can't, your first step in life, in a Jewish life, is to know that there is a Torah, and the Torah is life. Ki hem chayenu. It is absolutely your life. And the Rebbe was saying, not this is what Rashi means. The Rebbe was crying because the Jewish people were suffering in Golus. Thousands of years ago, no, today, now. He's feeling the pain of Golus right now when he's learning the Torah, because the Torah is Torah Chaim, it's life. And without that, you don't have any life. That was step one in my coming to who I was. And I found it, I really just, it hit me very, very deeply, this particular Rashi Sikha. I've written this article from all different sides. I've written about this experience. The next Shabbos was Va'era. Shabbos Va'era. Then there was Shabbos Boy. Then there was Yud Shevat. Then there was B'Shalach. There was Farbrengen all those weeks. Then there was no Farbrengen Yisrael, but there was a Farbrengen Mishpatim, which was already Shabbos Mavarchim Adar. And in each Farbrengen, usually at the beginning of the Farbrengen. It was amazing. And the Rebbe was literally talking to me. I had not shared this with the Rebbe, my own struggles, my dilemmas, and my questions. And each one was another step. At some point, the Rebbe spoke about shlichus, miftzoim. The Rebbe mentioned miftzoim in the first sikha of a Shabbos Farbrengen. It was hardly ever did that. And as the 6 weeks came together, I got this message. The message was, if you want to be happy in life, you need to find where your talents are most pronounced, where your talents can be best used. You can drive a truck. You can be a computer programmer. You can be a chef. I like all three of those things. I like flying planes. I have pilots with me that have taken me up, and I've actually flown, I've tried to fly a plane, a little plane. Thrilling, it's fantastic. It's a great experience. But is that really, would that really express who you really are? Would that, in other words, would that make who your talents are, what your talents are, would that bring them out? Would that develop who you really are? If you will not be happy in life if you haven't found that which best expresses your talents. That was one of the Shabbos. The Rebbe spoke about this very point. The Rebbe spoke about Miftzayim, and there was one sikha, very heavy sikha about connection to the Rebbe. And so the picture was, you've got to find which is best your talents. You've got to have the Torah as your base, living Torah. You've got to be involved in the Rebbe's work. You've got to be connected to the Rebbe. And so there were six lessons like this. And it answered my whole dilemma was answered. Therefore, who am I? Who would I best be? Be a shliach. I have talents, but I think the best talents would be being a shliach. So that's when I decided to be a shliach, not before then. But I still wasn't sure. Was I fantasizing, dreaming this? Or is this real? Was the Rebbe actually addressing this? I couldn't figure that one out. And I decided that Purim, the Farbrengen of Purim, was going to be the time where this is going to it's either yes or no. And we expected Purim, there were certain Purims by the Rebbe that were, wow. And other Purims were just Purim, just plain Purim. And I was hoping for a wow.
Is it Mem Gimel?
Mem Gimel.
So Mem Beis was the year before. That was wow.
And Mem Aleph was on Maimer, was Friday and everything else. And Mem Hey was also wow. And Mem Daled was coming Rabbi Shachar Zera. Mem Gimel was one of the deadest Purims ever by the Rebbe. Not that the Rebbe was sad, the Rebbe was clapping and the singing, but it wasn't Purim. It was like not Farbrengen. Farbrengen went on for about 4 hours. And then came the Alter Rebbe's Nigun, and it's going to finish. And I am saying to myself, there's no Purim here, then your sign is gone. This is nothing. The Rebbe,
So you decided to become a handyman?
a pilot. The Rebbe then asked the Chazan to sing Sheyipana Beis HaMikdash. You can watch all of this, by the way, in a video. There's a video of this whole Farbrengen. The Rebbe asked the Chazan to sing Sheyipana Beis HaMikdash. Sheyipana Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbe's sitting here. The Rebbe keeps on looking and looking. Like every few seconds, he's looking. And the song had no energy to it. And the Rebbe was like distracted. And the song finished. The Rebbe went, yet, and immediately turned. It turns out there was a kid that had fallen asleep. And he was lying flat today this kid is a shliach in Germany. I know who he is. I just met him in Israel. He's a 5-year-old kid. Huh? No. A 5-year-old kid from Israel.
Wow.
And he had fallen asleep. And the Rebbe was like, the Rebbe has to walk out of the Farbrengens in a few minutes, and this kid is out cold. So Binyamin Klein, seeing that the Rebbe seems to be busy, so Binyamin Klein comes down from his place, and you can see him disappearing, like goes like under the table. He's gone down to this kid, and after a couple of minutes, Nick, I'm still singing this niggin. The kid makes his appearance. He's standing like this. He's like waking up, and the Rebbe has this. He's not like smiling, but you can see the Rebbe was sort of amused by this. And the Rebbe reaches to his a thing of cake, and the Rebbe hands the kid a piece of cake. And the kid can hardly open up his eyes. He takes the cake. As soon as he took the cake, the Rebbe turns to Rabbi Yoel, and the Rebbe says, "Shpola Zeder," to sing the niggin of the Shpola Zeder. Now, Rabbi Yoel thought that the Rebbe said, it sounded like prozes. The Rebbe didn't say Shpola Zeder, sorry. The Rebbe said Shpola. So he thought the Rebbe was saying prozes. The Rebbe said, the Shpola Zeder. And the Rebbe Groner comes running. The Rebbe begged for the niggin from the Shpola Zeder. And so Rabbi Yoel started, and you can see the Rebbe's face lit up. And the Rebbe turned around, and the whistling, and then the Rebbe started swinging his hand. And the whole 7-7, this was the Purim moment. Everybody was jumping. The whole place was jumping up and down. And the Rebbe went faster and faster. And the Rebbe wasn't just swinging his hand. His whole body was dancing up and down. And 3 times they sang that over that refrain. 3 times. And then the Rebbe stopped swinging with his hand, but the Rebbe continued singing the song further. But as soon as he stopped swinging his hand, at that very moment, the Rebbe quickly turned to his left for 1 second and looked straight into my eyes. You can see that on the video as well. Just for a second, and he turns away. It was as if the Rebbe was saying, it's for you. The moment is for you. The 6 steps were for you, and that's where I came from. If you want to know where I came from, that's where I came. That is my life. That was my life. That is my life. From then on, that's my role model. That's the model that I live with. That the Rebbe took it from nowhere, from out of the air, and 6 straight Farbrengens.
Poor guy. You needed that to get you up to what you have to do.
And at the end of it, the Rebbe went like this.
A regular guy, it would be like automatic. But you poor guy, you have to have 6 Farbrengens and a special look.
I couldn't be a handyman even if I wanted to.
Yeah, I get it.
I have 2 left hands, if that.
Poor guy.
I can't even change a bulb. So
Sal did a somersault in front of the Rebbe.
you did a somersault in front of the Rebbe?
No. No, it was when the Rebbe was in the high bima. I don't know, it was a nun, whatever year it was, he was in the high bima.
After the show.
But afterwards, later, I was bringing up there, and I did a somersault off of that beam.
All right.
A big schus.
Somersaults
a
are always
symmetrical guy. What happened was, the guys who were giving l'chaim that night were Bachram that were little kids when I was in California. Menachem Shochet.
Oh, I know him.
I know, yeah. A wacko, right?
He's whacked out of his
So,
mind.
and
He
these
lives
guys,
in Israel now.
these guys are giving me l'chaim a whole night. So I end up on the top of the Rebbe's bima, and I did a somersault.
All right. I did it on
A
Simchas
big
Torah.
scoot.
Now, what's the message? What's the lesson? The lesson is, in addition to whatever message this has in and of itself, look into yourself and everything else, the message is the Rebbe is mamish there for you.
And each one of us,
That's what I'm saying.
in particular.
That's what I'm saying. He's really there. Even if you're not consulting, he'll find you. If you're a chassid, then he's going to be there for you. He really took care of this. This was something that was sitting on my heart for the rest of my life, basically, to shape where my life was going to go. Huh?
Come back to that all the time. I mean, you're in situations now where you'll reflect back on that. And this is how you.
It took me a long time, but I actually wrote this whole story up because I felt it's important for it to come out, to get out there, and how special it is to be connected to the Rebbe. You really do have, you have this leadership, this shepherd, this ability to have this leader. The kids asked me last night, well, what do we do that we don't have these Farbrengens, we don't have these dollars, and we don't have these moments? And that's, I said, then you're not really tuning in to the shepherdness of the Rebbe, which is what the Rebbe really, really, really is. I said, you can tune in. I gave them several examples of different moments that I've had with the Rebbe well after Gimel Tammuz. And so they said, well, you know how to have the moments. I said, no, I don't. I feel that I need to be connected to the Rebbe. That's why. Because you have to live your life that way. And when you live your life that way, then you have that connection. I'll share with you a different story. I've shared this story before here in Pittsburgh. But I was in Krakow, Poland in 2007 for the first time for Shabbos there. And there's a shliach, Eliezer Gurari, who lives there now. He's still there now. Huh? Gurari. Cholon. Right. And he had just gotten there in the summer of 2006, and this is now winter of 2007. We're going right after Pesach. And I called him up, and I said, we're going to be there for Shabbos, and I asked permission from the March of the Living. I was going on the March of the Living to take 15 kids and take them to the shul, the Ramah shul, the shul of the Ramah, which was the shul that he was active in. And then after that, to go home to his house and have a proper Shabbos. I said, I want the works. The filter fish and the kugel and the kishk and the I want everything in. And we'll pay. We gave him about $1,500, not just for the meal, but new shliach. So this is the southern region. The southern region includes Texas, Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina, or something like that. So together with me was Penny Andruzier. I don't know if you know him. He's from Florida. And we are very, very, very close friends. And so we've done a lot. We've pulled off a lot of stuff in our lives. We still do. And so we got the permission for these 15 kids, and we took them to the Moshul, and took them to the house of Rabbi Gurari, Rabbi Mrs. Gurari, Rabbi Alevsky from Cleveland, is Mrs. Gurari's grandfather, and they were there for Pesach. Okay? And they were there for Pesach. Alevsky said, we're still there for that Shabbos. And that was one Farbrengen. Wow. You see, they were all over 18, and in Poland you can drink when you're 18 already. And we didn't go overboard. We gave them all l'chaim. They had to make achlotas. Some of them are from today as a result of this Farbrengen. It was an absolutely amazing Farbrengen. Alevsky didn't have to say one word. This was just Penny and I. And it was one of these Shabbosim
God sat down with you. God sat down with you at that Farbrengen.
I hope so, yeah. But you felt just so uplifted after this. Okay, so Krakow was always now this amazing experience. First of all, Krakow is an absolutely gorgeous, beautiful city, and it's very Jewish and everything else. But besides that, it was also very spiritual because of what, the impact that we were able to have on these students. And then 3 months later is Gimel Tammuz. This is 2007. So I was in the oil all day. Today, I don't even know if you can do that. I haven't been to Gimel Tammuz for quite a few years. I usually go somewhere to speak in Farbrengen, and I go
You
after.
can go there on Shabbos, on Gimel Tammuz.
I go after.
No, I'm saying you could.
I go Farbrengen. No, I'm saying I don't go lately because I usually go somewhere. I refuse to go anywhere until one year somebody called South Africa or some of these places called and sent me on the guilt trip. What do you think?
How could you not?
What do you think the Rebbe who you're visiting on Gimel Tammuz would say? That you don't want to spread, you don't want to inspire other people. So anyway, so I said, you know what? I'll start going, but I won't go home until I go to the oil for Gimel Tammuz. It could be Daled or Hey or Vav or even Yud, but I'll end up at the oil around Gimel Tammuz, for Gimel Tammuz, and I will. So I haven't been there in the last few years, but I know how packed it is, and how you can stand in line for 4 hours and you only get a minute in there, and that's what it is. That's it.
But the line is also the part of the minute.
Okay, I'm not. I don't disagree with that. It's not that I don't want to stand on the line. I'm just not there. And so anyway, so I'm in the oil a whole day. It's 6 p.m. and I'm leaving after davening and preparing myself and spending the minute in there or 2 minutes, whatever they were giving those days. Anyway, I come out. I choose to come out one of the exits, and there he is. Eliezer Garari is standing. He's got his hands behind his back like this, and he's leaning against this, and he looks terrible. So I said, I walked right over to him. I said, Eliezer, Shalom Aleichem. You look terrible. That's what I said in Ivrit. אתה נראה מאוד לא טוב. מה קרה פה? He says, I feel terrible. I said, what's going on? He says, I have a big problem. I have to go back to Krakow. My eyes lit up. Krakow? I was about to say, wow, that's the Ramoshul, all the dead people, all the dead synagogues, all the greatest of the great, the Taisis Yamta, the Megala Amukas, the Bach is there, all the great people, they're all dead. Here is a guy who hasn't been there for a year. He doesn't know the language. He doesn't know the people. The people who do know him are fighting with him. He doesn't have a penny to his name. And now he came to New York finally after how many months, and he's got to go back there. He's depressed.
20 miles from London and Auschwitz.
That's not a big deal. Auschwitz is where he makes money from all the people that come. But those days, it was just beginning, and it was, everything. Every time you begin anything, it's difficult. The Gemara says, "Kolas kolas kashas."
Beginning.
The Gemara in Bracha says it's difficult. Kolas kolas kashas. And I'm about to say how great Krakow is. I'm going to tell him how great Krakow is. He's living there, you idiot, and he doesn't have anything. And you're going to tell him under all these big, empty, dead buildings and all these buried over there. That's going to be. And I just said to myself, my shlichus right now, this is in a second, split second in my mind, my shlichus right now is to make this guy smile. And I have no clue how to do this. And I'm just standing there, maybe a second or two passes. And I look to the street side, and coming towards us is one of this generation, Dor Hashvi's great Hasidim, by the name of Yossi Lew. He said Reichik before. This is the son of Rabbi Reichik.
Before he passed away.
Well, it was 1 year before he passed away. I was very close with him. He was in my house several times in Atlanta. Amazing person. Just a man who was, no one can say one bad word about him. And he loved doing favors for other people. He excelled in doing favors. He lived for doing favors for other people. Just an absolute fantastic person. And I said, Yossi, Shalom Aleichem. Oh, let me introduce you to Rabbi Gerari from Krakow. He says, oh, you're the guy in Krakow? Just this morning, I was in Borough Park, and I was in the house of a guy who is the grandson of the last chief rabbi of Krakow. Krakow was renowned for its great rabbanim over there. As I said before, the Magal HaMukas, the Tesis Yamtiv, the Bach, the Ramah, all these people over there, the Megini Shlomo, all different great people. They always had this great chief rabbi there. He says, this guy is a grandson of the last chief rabbi in Krakow before the war. And he says to me today, I heard that the Chabad has moved to Krakow and he wants to donate a Sefer Torah.
Oh.
Do you need a Sefer Torah? He says, yeah. Gerari says, yeah. He says, wait. And yesterday, I was somewhere in, I think it's in New Jersey, and the same story as somebody's a grandson, and he wants to donate a significant donation, a lot of money, thousands of dollars. Do you need money? Ask a shliach. Do you need money? He says, yeah. So he had a little notebook in his jacket pocket like this. So he pulled out this notebook and he's flipping the pages, and he says, look, this guy, here's the number, here's a pen, there's a paper, take down this guy's number. This other guy, you should take your father. Anyway, they're dealing with whatever they're dealing with. I'm standing on this side over here, and I feel like I'm Eliezer. I'm like, wow, this thing just happened in front of my eyes. It transpired right in front of me, and you should have seen his guy's face, lit up, smiling. So I said,
It came out, you introduced him to Yossi, right?
all I did was say, this is Yossi Reinschik. That's all I said. And I was like, wow. Now, Reinschik and Gerari finished their business. He went on his way. So I turned to Gerari and I said to him, "Nu, ma'ata omer achshav? What do you say now?" He says, you hear all these stories about the oil. And they're always about someone else. He says, all of a sudden, he said, I want you to know, I'm so down that I decided, and they only give you 2 minutes at the oil. I decided that I'm not going to write anything. I can't even stand there and read it. I walked in there today, and I spoke. And I said these words. I said, I have to go back to Krakow. The shlichus is extremely difficult, and I'm in desperate need of a Sefer Torah and a lot of money. And before I leave the premises, I have them both. Now,
Wait, before I leave the premises,
I got them both.
Oh.
Yeah, he got exactly what he asked for.
In 2009, there was a Hachnosa Sefer Torah. When Reichik died, a year later, I sent this story to his wife. They were asking for stories about Yossi Reichik. They made a book. And I sent in this story. When they got this story, they turned to the guy who donated the Sefer Torah, and it was donated to Krakow in memory of Yossi Reichik. And it was done in 2009, after Pesach, right? The March of the Living Time, so that I should be there. They wanted me to be able to be there, but I was there 7, 8, and 10, but I couldn't get there at 9. So I'm not in the picture. You can go to COL, any of these places, and put in Krakow Sefer Torah, you'll see. 10 years later, in 2017, I was in Krakow for Shabbos Bahar with a group of people. And after davening, Gerari walks over to me, and I can still see him doing this. He says, I'm not sure if you remember this, but 10 years ago, I was at the oil, and I said, what, are you kidding me?
What do you mean? I'm not sure.
One of the greatest miracles I ever saw, and I saw it with my eyes, and I had a little bit to do with it, just a little bit, not much, but I made the shidduch here, and I can't ever forget this, like, it happened in front of me. And then this year, I was there for Shabbos Vayera. He says, I want you to lane. To lane. I'm a Baal Korah, I want you to lane. So it's like, anyway, so if you want to know if things are still active over there, You have to be connected.
Why do you go to Krakow so often?
You want to hear the whole story?
Is that a whole story?
I go to Poland very often. And what happened was, when I was growing up, the Holocaust was very real because I was growing up in the 60s and 70s in Europe.
And where?
Europe. Half the men in the mikveh had numbers, and women in the stores. It was so common. The survivors over there. So it was in my eyes. But I don't have any relatives on both my mother and my father's side, at least 4 generations back. They all came over before. So there's nothing. The closest relative I could have ever had in the Holocaust would have been at minimum a 4th cousin, which it's just not, it's too far. So there was no personal connection, although we were always inundated with survivors. Even in Lubavitch there were people with numbers. His grandmother, your grandmother, was in Auschwitz, and she had numbers on her left hand, Blumeraskin, and she was from Hungary, but she ended up being in Auschwitz, when the Hungarians were sent in '44. So they were all around, but it didn't really resonate with me, and because it wasn't personal. Not that I didn't care about it, but it just. And I remember one day I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I climbed up to the top shelf of my father's bookcase, and I found some Holocaust books over there. Couldn't believe it. And I decided not to ask my father because I didn't want to get punished for going climbing where I shouldn't be, kriching where I shouldn't be kriching. But that's not the real reason. There was something else that was the real reason, and that is because in that time, communism was happening. The Holocaust was over 20 years before I was born. Communism was still going on. Not only that, there were people coming out of Russia in the early 70s, including his uncle, Rabbi Moshe Katzenellenberg, who came straight to England, and plenty others. And the Rebbe relentlessly never stopped talking about that. Every Farbrengen, the Rebbe would bring them up. And so this was much more real, because it was actually transpired, it was going on at that time. And the Rebbe was very passionate about this. So the Holocaust didn't really play a role in my life until I was dragged on the March of the Living in 2005 by a dear friend. He came to me one day in shul and he said, "My son is going on the March of the Living," he says to me. I said, "Oh, I've heard lots of great things about the March of the Living. Lucky boy." And he said to me, his father, me, "I'm also going," he says. I said, "Wow, even greater, beautiful." And then he said, "And you're my rabbi, and you're also going." I said, "Oh, no, I'm okay." Not that I didn't want to go to Poland, but the trip to Israel was a problem for me. The 1 week in Poland, 1 week in Israel. I said, I vowed I wasn't going to Israel. He says, it's too late. I've paid for it, and you're in, and you have to go. So basically, dragged me there. And I just could not believe what I had seen. And I wrote every day an article from what we were going through. I remember sitting in Treblinka, every place I went, I didn't just see it. I was feeling it. I was connecting myself to it. And I was asked, after that, as the rabbi, I was asked to talk to the students. Each time we went to a really tough place, walking into gas chambers, standing in Majdanek, in front of 70 tons of human ash. You can't imagine these kind of things. You can't watch the movies and read the books and speak to survivors. You have to go in order to really, really get a taste of what it really was. You don't know it if you don't go. You don't really know it. So I was just I was going crazy. And so I wrote every day, I wrote an article. I sent it to a small group of people that were on my list. I come back, and people were just going crazy. They said, we felt like we were there with you and everything. Blah, 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 blah. So my brother, who's into publishing, he said to me, this needs to come out in a book. And if you're not going to do it, I said, what book? What are you talking about, book? He says, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. I said, you know what? I don't want other people writing my book. So let me look into it. So I started looking into it. I realized I had so many questions about what I had seen. Some of the things I didn't really notice or didn't see again. I said, I have to go back. I went back a second time in 2007, and I wrote articles every day from the same places that I wrote in 2005, completely different articles. Different stories, different focus, different dimensions. And the same thing happened in 2008, and the same thing happened in 2010. And now I've collected all of the articles and put them into categories. I sent a copy to Elie Wiesel. I wanted him to write an introduction, but he did not respond to me. And it taught me, because I didn't write it properly. I wrote it more as a blog rather than as a book. I rewrote the whole thing. I spent thousands of hours researching the Holocaust. I went onto websites of deniers. I want to understand. I spoke to survivors, and I spoke to people about life before the Holocaust. I need to understand the whole process of it. It's incomprehensible what happened, but the knowledge of it and the knowledge of each place, what it does. Plus, in all these articles, I added the inspirational part that I was sharing with these students. For example, we came out of Majdanek one time, and the kids were just sobbing on the bus. And I said, fellows, I'm sure these words are familiar to you. Yes, Gadal v'yes Kadash Shmei Rabba. You know what those words mean? That the name of God should be great. You would think that a person who's saying Kaddish and is mourning a loss, and particularly a hard loss, that you would talk some words of comfort, but there's not a single word that mentions anything about the person who passes away, not about the challenge and the sadness. It's all about God. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mavorach. The great name of God should be blessed. And Sadavis Alevis Alol Shmei the Kutchabricha. You should glorify the name of the Holy Blessed One. It's nothing about that. You know why? The reason, I'm just giving an example. These things are popping into my head as I was dealing with these things myself. Like, well, what do we say? The first time I came out of the gas chamber in Auschwitz and stood in front of the ovens. And one of the women in the group said, Rabbi, say a few words. It was total silence. And I said, do you know how many people said Shema Yisrael in that gas chamber? Do you know how many people said Ani Mamin in that gas chamber? I said, if you listen carefully, you will hear the screams of the men and of the women and of the babies screaming, choking to death. But if you really, really listen carefully, you will hear Shema Yisrael. Everybody repeat after me, Shema Yisrael, Ani Mamin. And we sang this song and everything else. That's, what else are you going to say? And the kids came away from there knowing that despite all of these problems, these people there were very people who died, wanted God to be in that room. And our message is to take God wherever we go. We often say, these people don't have any matzevas, they don't have any tombstones. We are their tombstones. And they wanted to be Jewish, now we have to be Jewish for us and for them, now that we've connected to them. It's that kind of thing, words of encouragement. You can't deal with the other thing. I remember the first year, we went to Majdanek is the most difficult place to go. It's a terrible place to visit. That's where the tons of ashes are. And the gas chambers have ashes in them. I mean, the ovens. And it's just, anyway.
Intact. It's
Huh?
completely intact, no? Isn't Madonna completely intact?
More or less.
It said it could restart within 24 hours.
That's what
Really
I went
Where's
there.
the timing for the Eberstein?
In 2005, I went there with a survivor
Where's
from
the timing of the Eberstein?
Maidanek. From Maidanek. A survivor from Maidanek.
Totally made sense. Made sense, Maurice.
I went there with a survivor from there, and he said, this place is as we left it. Russia came in quickly, and they couldn't, so they didn't destroy it. Auschwitz, not Auschwitz. Auschwitz is still standing, but Auschwitz was just a concentration camp. The next door to Auschwitz is Birkenau. That is, they bombed the gas chambers and whatever. So it's not so intact. But again, I've been through Birkenau, and I've led groups through Birkenau maybe 20 times. I can show you places over there that are, make your hair stand on edge.
Where's the timing of Eberstein and all that?
Huh?
Where's the timing of Eberstein and all that?
We put together 5 shluchim, put together a trip with prices and everything ready to go, and then the war broke out in Israel. So we couldn't go to Israel, and people were afraid of flying. We're going to wait till the war is over, and then we're going to we have a website. We're ready to go to take balabatim, and if you bring a certain amount of balabatim, you come along as well. And we make one big Farbrengen there, and we're going to do this like every year. We'll offer it to shluchim around the world. And if you to go through it, you have to know what you're doing. You can take the local tour guides over there, and they can give you a cup over here that the history and the Polish government went in hiding, all of that stuff, but they won't give you Yiddishkeit. As far as the Eibishter is concerned, Moshe Rabbeinu asked, what should I tell them? And God never says, this is why you're in Golus. He says, tell them I'm there. At the end of the Parsha of Shmos, he says, why have you done evil to these people? God says, oh, you'll soon see. But he never answers the question. He never answers the question of why. Because you know why? If you were to answer somebody and explain someone why the Holocaust happened, the person who hears it and the person who knows it becomes automatically a Nazi. Because as soon as you hear why it happened, and obviously the reason would be very legitimate because the Eibishter made it happen, then you would say, oh, okay. So if 6 million people were slaughtered, that's all right. And if millions more were haunted to the rest of their lives, the survivors, that's okay. And you dismiss it right away because this is what God wants. That's a Nazi who doesn't care about other people being murdered and slaughtered and tortured to death. So no, you don't need to hear the reason. Nobody needs to know why. You just need to know that after the Holocaust, these survivors came out and they rebuilt Judaism bigger and better than it ever was. And our mission is to keep it blossoming. And all the troubles and this, anyway, so I got very caught up in this whole thing. So I go to Europe. My parents live in Europe. I go to visit my parents every year, B'li Neder, as part of my hachlata when I was very, very sick, and I made resolutions to become a better form of myself, and one of them was to be a better son and to spend time with my parents.
Europe and England?
In England. When I go home, come back here, I don't go back direct. I usually go through Europe. And for the last 3 or 4 years, I've gone to Dachau. I go to Poland as much as I can. Poland inspires me. It inspires me because there are millions of Kedoshim that are there. I feel that elevation when I go there. I was this year in Mauthausen in Austria. I was in Buchenwald in Germany this year. I was in Budapest this year. I went a couple of years ago. I went to Babi Yar when Ukraine was still a place to go, in Kiev. I was in Lubavitch. In Lubavitch, there is a place where 483 people were slaughtered by the Nazis, by the Einsatzgruppen, by these
In the town of Lubavitch.
in the town of. They actually gathered them from different little shtetl around, took them into Lubavitch, and there's a monument for them till this day.
So is Lubavitch any similar to what it was?
It's completely the
What?
way it was.
Completely what it was.
No paved roads, no running water. It is one of the most amazing experiences you can have. I spent the whole day there basically by myself. First, I went to Rabbi Munschein's mikveh in Smolensk, which is about a 25-minute drive. And Rabbi Munschein was waiting for me, together with a group. And then in the shul, he has a great, beautiful shul over there, and with a beautiful community. And after that, we went to Lubavitch, and I spent the whole day there. It's surreal. It's wow.
I have a nephew, a adopted nephew, lives in Russell, used to be Russell, married out, not, and
He lives in Breslov? In the
Breslau,
Breslau in Poland.
in Poland, Wrocław.
Breslov in Polish, yeah.
And so I know there's no shliach in it. There's one in Warsaw, one in
One in what?
Krakow, and there's probably one in Vienna. Vienna might be the closest.
Vienna?
Might be closest to.
To Breslov?
Yeah, Breslau. The Wrocław. And I don't know who to call or if anybody would be in a position to help at all.
So the first person I would call would be Rabbi Stambler. Rabbi Stambler in Warsaw.
Stamler? Okay.
Stambler
Stamler in Warsaw.
in Warsaw. I have his number.
Okay.
And just ask him what would be, he's the official head shliach of Poland. So ask him what would be the best way. He might tell you, speak to Gorari, or no, I have somebody who's going to be going close by soon, so go there. Mm-hmm. Or he can say Vienna. He'll know what to do. You have to ask the people who are in Poland. And even if he can give him a call and speak his language in Polish,
No, he's American.
so what's he doing over there?
What?
He married a girl from there? Okay. Speak to Rabbi Gorari. Breslov, I think, is closer to Krakow.
Okay.
I think so. Let me check. I've been all over Poland, but I've never spent time in Breslov. I'm not a Breslover. Breslau, it's not Breslov, AU. In Polish, it's Wrocław.
Wrocław, yeah.
Wrocław. And it's close to the Czech Republic, by the way. It's not that far from Prague.
Okay.
It's not too far from Częstochowa, which has no Jews, which used to have, and Katowice and Krakow. Okay. It's in that region. As I said, it's closer to Krakow. If I'm not mistaken,
How many hours ahead are they from here?
6. So you asked a question. I hope you got your answer.
Yeah, no, it's very.
I told you it's you open up a whole.
It's beautiful. You express it. That's it. And I find the Holocaust is, but just reading, because I've read a lot about it. It just gets to a point where it's just like, it's
disgusting.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not you know.
But
it's,
when
you
you
don't know
go,
what to do
it's
with it.
very different.
It's just
Some people go and they say, I can't go back there again. Other people go and they say, I need to go back there again. I can tell you so many stories. I'm like, spend the whole
Probably
night
is
on this.
if you're helping somebody that's going through a personal tragedy, you know, and you know you can learn how to counsel them just from.
I've counseled a lot of kids on this trip. I've dealt with the groups and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Good luck. Okay. Good message. Good. All
Hey, At that point, I might have gone one time then. When I got on Yud Aleph Nisan, that's a whole story in and of itself. But the Rebbe sent me a message on Yud Aleph Nisan, Tafshin Mem Beis, when the Rebbe turned 80. And it was from my grandfather. My grandfather came in when nobody else came in. I was so beside myself. I was just.
That he came in?
No, that I didn't come.
Well, you didn't go.
I had a boarding pass. I lost my ticket. I already had a place on the plane. Those days, you can get a boarding pass weeks in advance. Today, you can only check in 24 hours before, maybe in certain cases, 3 days before. Not more than that because of security reasons. Those days, weeks. I had a boarding pass. I had a seat. TWA flight. And my father guilted me in not to go. It's the only regret I have in my life.
Your father went?
No, crazy. The Rebbe said not to go. Yeah. Nobody went, but my grandfather went, and my grandfather told the Rebbe, Yossi is really, really upset. So the Rebbe said to my grandfather, tell Yossi that he's not his grandfather. And when I heard that, there's a lot of different ways to interpret that. You can say, tell Yossi he's not his grandfather. You're a little schnook. You're a Rebbister. Another way of looking at it is, and if it comes from the Rebbe, it's not stop, better. Another way of looking at it is, tell Yossi that he he can be compared to his grandfather one day. But there's a lot of avodah left for you. So it's more of a positive way. There's all kinds of ways of looking at this. And I didn't know what to do with it. I only got the information after the office. I call it the blacking office. I was like, I just don't understand why I just didn't go. It's bothering me to this day. It's 40 years later, and I'm 45 years later. I was like, why didn't I go? Anything else I did in life, you did it. You made a mistake, you go, move on. But not here. Here, I can't. Anyway, so after that, I was dealing with her message to me, and I didn't feel comfortable before I started working on it. So I don't believe I went after that. I don't believe I went to visit Mem Gimel, Mem Dalet, Mem Hey. But on the other hand, I don't believe I didn't go. I can't remember now. I know I didn't go in Mem Ches, in Tismach. For that is just a shot. And when I wanted to go, they said that the Rebbe wasn't seen. My grandfather came in for Yud Shevat that year or something. Couldn't go. She wasn't feeling well. It was Chabad Shvat she died. Anyway, so I don't remember if I was there while I was in Old Taylor. Maybe I should have been there. I don't remember.
Your sisters would have when they were in Fahrenheit, they would get to go by themselves, right?
No.
No?
That's
Only with
another
grandma?
story. That's a whole other story. My sister was there in seminary in Tafshin Mem Hey. And my grandfather was there for Simchas Torah. And after Simchas Torah, he went to see the Rebbe as usual. And my sister went with. And my grandfather told the Rebbe that my granddaughter is going to be in New York for this year in the seminary, in Beis Rifka Seminary. So the Rebbe said, if you're going to be in New York, then make sure you contact me and we'll have some tea every once in a while. And I'm serious. My sister wouldn't call her, that's ridiculous. One day, my cousin, Jaffe, got engaged. She was getting married in Oder of Tafshin Mem Hey. First Einikel of my grandparents was getting married in Mem Hey. And one day, the Rebbe calls the dorm. And some girl answers the phone, and she's looking for Chaya Lew, and she says she's not here. So the Rebbe said, "Can you please tell her that Mrs. Schneerson called?" What? The girl almost dropped the phone. Mrs. Schneerson from President Street called. So as soon as my sister came into the door, the Rebbe called. She called back, and Rebbe said, "I'd like to invite you for tea tomorrow night." So my sister went over and she said, "I know that this first Jaffe Einikel is getting married, and you must be terribly homesick. So I called you to invite you so we can talk together." Isn't that amazing? 5 months later. So she didn't go like Stam, even though she could have. The Jaffes and the Lews, we did not behave that way. There were others who did, but we did not take advantage of that. Somebody says that one of the Jaffe Einiklach once asked the Rebbe, where are your children?
Holtzman, huh?
It was Holtzman who just recently came out with it. But until Holtzman came out with it, everybody blamed the Jaffes for saying that, because obviously the Jaffes would have said such a thing. We were so careful there. It was like going to your
I never heard a name.
We wore Shabbos clothes when we went. It was like going into the Rebbe. It was no different than that. Although obviously it was very different. We sat down and we ate cream cakes and candies and ice cream and punch and all kinds of other things on the table. But it was no different than that.
Brother Pitney had all these stories this year. Sounded like that, almost in a certain way they're very heinous over there.
She tried her best. She tried her absolute best to make everybody feel comfortable. When I was 11 in Lamed Hay, we went there, and I was already old enough to understand where I am now. And what I wanted to see was what is in the Rebbe's living room and dining room. What is there? So my eyes began to wander just for a quick second. And as soon as I turned back, she was staring at me, straight in my face. And I did it later, and she was against it. Every time I looked, she came straight at me. So, yes, as long as you were behaving yourself, it's okay. You don't know what you have until you don't have it. That's a famous line that's very important.
You go to the Rashad also?
What?
Rashad?
What? Why?
There's a picture of your
My
grandfather.
grandfather was invited by the Rashad because he thought that my grandparents had a lot of money and he wanted to raise money for the yeshiva. It was for Tmifin. Are you kidding me?
They say in Meiser, the Rashag, he was raising money from someone. You got a sense the guy was not giving as much as he was capable of. And he also, the fellow was under the impression that he was talking to the Rebbe.
Yeah.
So, Rashag, the way the story goes is he went along, he didn't
say, you're making a mistake. I'm not that son-in-law.
Yeah. And then at the end of the meeting, when he felt like the guy didn't give enough, he said, look, Lubavitch, we don't give Kollel, we don't give, well, we can withhold bracha. It's a story, I don't know if it's true, but it's a story.
Rashad was, he had his place, and you got to give him.
He was very good at what he did.
First of all, but you got to give him the credit for his loyalty to the Rebbe.
Mm-hmm.
No one
Absolutely.
ever had to go through what he went through. And so he's muftach loishu b'nei olam haba, and Lubavitch has no need to disparage him. On the other hand, he was an interesting character. He was a Der Hashishi kind of person. So to relate, he was incredibly a chassid of the Rebbe. Stood up at the Mamorim, even Kein Sicha.
Yeah.
No one else did. He did. And etc. He said, I cannot sit in the Rebbe saying a mic. And so on and so forth. And he did like, he danced with the Rebbe. Let's remember that. He had his place right in the front. He had an aliyah every Shabbos and Yom Tov and everything else. It was always, he was given the biggest cup. It's an idiot Barry. If he didn't turn away from the Rebbe, he would have had a similar kind of covet in Lubavitch. And the covet in Lubavitch we don't give it out so quickly. He would have gotten that. It's based on love. We respect that. On the other hand, Shag was he wasn't belong to us. All right, boys. I think.
Kingman, I remember with one Farbrengen here. I just remember one word. Kingman, Arizona. I don't know.
You remember that story?
I don't know this.
Just remember the place.
Kingman, Arizona.
This was here in Pittsburgh?
No, somewhere.
In Yeshiva or somewhere?
Yeah.
When you were in Yeshiva? Kingman, Arizona was when my car broke down. That is, Kingman, Arizona is 3 streets. It's a little tiny shtetl just after the border of California and Arizona. I was driving a car back home and everything that could go wrong went wrong. Everything. Like every single thing. And you know what? I'm still here. Oh!